Right, just Dwight goes started. Gentlemen, we're all ready? It's 7:30 on January 22nd, and call to order. Oh, stand up and do the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A moment of silence to remember the services and sacrifices of the armed service members who protect our nation and the first responders who protect our neighborhoods. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
Here.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Here.
Councilmember Jedinak?
Here.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Sackett?
Here.
Councilmember Jackson?
Here.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Here.
President Kelly?
Here. This meeting was advertised in the Daily Record and the Star Ledger, the official newspapers for the Township of Rockaway, on January 11, 2019. Notice was posted on the official bulletin board of Rockaway Township. Designation of arms. We have Lieutenant Tom in the back there. Thank you, Lieutenant Tom. And by the way, congratulations on your promotion to Lieutenant. The Township Code of Decorum 2-5-15. While the council is in session, the members shall preserve order and decorum. The council president, at his or her discretion, shall direct the chief of police or such other person in the police department as he may designate to be the sergeant of arms at the council meeting. The sergeant of arms shall employ reasonable means to maintain the proper order of decorum consistent with accepted standards. Thank you again, Lieutenant. Approval of minutes. We got January 7th, 2019 reorganization meeting. B, January 7th, 2019 closed session. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, who was the second? Mr. Jackson. Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
Yes on A, no.
You abstain.
I abstain,
you weren't
correct.
present. Thank you.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes on A.
Yes on A, no.
Councilmember Jedinak?
Yes on all.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes on A and B.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes on both.
Councilmember Sackett?
Too many changes being made on the minutes. No on A, and B, I think they're being manipulated, so I will vote no as well.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes on both.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Yes, A and B.
President Kelly?
Yes on A and B. Can you tell me what's on there?
Eight yes, 1 no on the regular. 6 yes. 2 no, 1 abstention.
On B, right?
Yep.
I have 8 yeses, 1 no on the reorganization meeting minutes. And on B, I have 6 yeses, 2 noes, and 1 abstention. Motion carries. We have 8, it would be ordinances to adopt. A would be O-19-01, an ordinance authorizing the conveyance of a perpetual deed of easement to accommodate the provisions of electrical system by JCP&L. The real property designated as Lot 1 in Block 11301 on the official tax map of Rockaway Township, which is more commonly known as the McVeigh property, 65 Mount Hope Road. Do I have a motion?
Motion. I'll second.
Microphones.
I motion. I second.
Motion made by Ms. Abrahamson, seconded by Ms. Smith.
Council President.
Discussion.
Yes. Is there any discussion?
Because this is up for adoption, there's open to the public. Or there should be. Specifically for this one.
Yeah. If there's anybody from the public that wishes to address this ordinance, please come to the microphone.
Michael Lottie, 19 North Brookside Drive. Can you just give an explanation of what's being done on the property?
Mrs. Seeger?
Yes. Verizon is putting a cell tower, or it is up there, and we have to move some of our poles and electricity to give that tower electricity, so they need an easement over our property. Is that right, Allison?
That is correct.
Are we getting a fee for the Verizon?
Yes, we are.
Mrs. Seeger, just in case Mr. Leardi has a follow-up, do we know an amount or a dollar amount that we may have that we receive from Verizon?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. Do you know how long the contract would be?
It's good for, I think, 10 or 25 years. I'd have to look it up.
But it is a revenue-making
Yes.
project that we have.
Yes.
Was there anything else, Mr. Leardi? No? Anybody else that wishes to speak? With that being said, close to the public. Oh, I'm sorry.
What ordinance is it and what is it about? Usually when it's presented, you did.
I did. I'll do it again for you. You want to come to the microphone?
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything on the paperwork with Verizon on.
It's not. It's for an easement. We were just talking about further down the road of what the cell tower's for.
Is there supposed to be paperwork for the audience if you're going to be bringing something up?
I believe the 019-01 is on the table.
Okay, I have that, and I don't see Verizon contract.
There was nothing regarding
Verizon cell tower. Okay.
Ms. Gray, it's
Yeah.
in there. It says,
I
in
see.
order to provide electrical service to a certain Verizon wireless cell tower on the top. Third whereas.
Got it. And I see Verizon in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fifth whereas, I see the Verizon cell tower. But I thought the reading meant a reading of it. That's all I'm
sorry?
I thought a reading, when it's open to the public the first time, is a reading of it in detail. So I just kind of missed that. If I didn't hear the comments, I wouldn't have known. That's all.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's on the agenda. I mean, if you want to ask afterwards with the administration more about it in detail, it's outside of what we have here.
All right, it's just the first reading, so nothing's going to happen for another 2
This is an ordinance to adopt.
to adopt. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak from the public? With that being said, it's close to the public. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jedinak?
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Yes.
Yes.
President Kelly?
Yes. 9 yeses, 0 nos, motion carries. This is the actual open to the public, correct? Hey, Bob, could you grab the sign-in sheet now? Yeah, please. Is there any, not that it's necessary, but if there's anybody who wants to sign the sign-in sheet, just so that it's easier for the clerk for the minutes to put the individual's names and addresses on there to reflect what is written there. However, if you're not on the list, I'm still going to give you opportunity to come to the microphone to speak on an issue. Everybody ready? I have a Patty Brower.
Patty Brower, 165 Perry Street. Good evening, Council. How y'all doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. Mr. Kelly, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Last meeting, when you ended up being in the middle seat here,
Yes.
you were saying you were going to make all these changes. One of them was don't sign in, don't have to be on time to sign in.
Oh, okay.
How come you couldn't do that when you're on council?
Unfortunately, I'm not the council president, and I don't control the meetings that were on there. We had a council president that had his way of running the meeting, and with the open to the public portion of that, and that's between the council president and what he decided to do with that. So being on the other side, as you are right now, as I was once before,
I know.
I know what it's like, and I don't want anybody to have to go through that. And we have had some changes and a lot of emotions going on. And moving forward, I hope it creates a little bit more discussions, debate on a calmness end of it, and we can move business in a more expedited fashion with that.
So you're saying that if you're not sitting in that seat, you can't make a suggestion to change something?
You can, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and if you felt that strongly, as you said last meeting, you would think that you would have done something earlier.
I did.
If it really bothered you.
I have made comments and mentions about it, and if you've been in the audience or watched it on video, I think you've even seen me try to address it. And again, not being the council president, not running the meeting, there's limits to what one can do.
I understand that, but you're a council,
I am.
okay? All of you. You have the option to bring anything up that you wish to change or you wish to discuss, correct?
Out of all 9 here, including administration and our mayor, absolutely.
Okay, and you never did it?
I did. I mean, whether you want to say I did it on the record or if I did it multiple times.
Well, I'll call shenanigans because I don't think I'll be honest, I don't think you have it, you don't have the answers.
I do, I'm telling you.
No,
Well,
no.
I don't think I have the answer that you want.
No, I don't think you understand the fact that if you're going to sit up there and think that you're going to do all these changes for the small minority rather than for the massive people that are here, such as, don't be here at 7:30, don't sign up. You don't have to sign up. You can come up anytime to talk, you don't have to sign. You don't realize, why don't you say that? You may not realize the type of meetings you're going to be having in doing something like that. As a president, do you not need some kind of control over your meeting?
Well, there is control over the meeting, absolutely. There's a decorum under the ordinance that I read before.
Will you have, besides that, I'm talking about the fact of having your public for a change actually wanting to listen to what's going on and maybe even agreeing with you, or having a public coming up here, and if you have them for 5 minutes, and you will interact with them, which I think is great. They can still do it in 5 minutes. You don't have to do it for an eternity. You said that you're not going to put a 5-minute limit on it. I mean, these changes are good for a small amount of people. They are not good for the full public. And
Well,
I think,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
and I think as a president, you would want to make it work for almost everybody, because you can't keep everybody happy. I understand that.
Sure. I agree.
But for doing it for a small amount, you're going to have only a small amount of people who are not going to sign up. If people want to come in, they're going to sign up. If they're going to be late, they're going to be late. Stuff happens.
Can I respond, if I may? I'm not here to try to disenfranchise any member of the public. Like, you're here having a conversation in a normal monotone, not argumentative, and you're putting out whatever you feel on your end emotionally of how the meetings are, what they were, focusing on me, not making any suggestions in your mind as to how the open to the public should take place, when it should take place, but I have. Maybe you've missed it, or maybe you didn't recognize when I have done it before, or even through an email or a conversation, or after a meeting, or even before a meeting. But nothing has changed as far as the ordinance of the 5-minute time limit. My mentality would be that I would figure that the members of the public would police themselves. When you're rambling on, you're going on, and it's not going on, it's repetitive and whatnot. And I don't want to have to police that and say, okay, your 5 minutes are up, and you're in mid-thought, halfway through what you're saying. So even in our code, there is that portion where one can get an extension of time, if needed, and going there. So what I'm hoping for is that, again, people police themselves in a sense of getting your point across, hopefully having answers to your questions that you may ask. And if not, we can get those answers. Hopefully we can expedite them, or it may take a little bit of work and some time to get that answer for you. So moving forward from the one meeting I chaired on the 16th of November of 2018, changing when the reorg was here and being the council president, and then where I'm at right now, I hope that you see a difference moving forward, especially with participation of the public and allowing them to speak and have these conversations. Now, when we have things that come up for vote and we're doing a roll call and we're having discussions within the council, that becomes a little difficult because of people wanting to chime in and speak their mind. That's something that I really don't want to, well, you can't allow, but I hope that people could kind of curtail it themselves rather than having this thing that I don't like come down and hammer, or having the police actually do their job, which, the individual at the microphone isn't. So moving forward, I hope it's what you're envisioning, but I don't want to set a time limit for one person and not for the other. And I hope that people will police themselves for the 5 minutes or less. And if they are moving forward and not sounding repetitious, I have no problem granting them that additional amount of time. No different than you, no different than anybody else that would come up here. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. You took up most of my time, but that's fine too. That's fine too. I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that.
I'll let you have your
question.
time if needed, but if that was the issue at hand, I hope that answers some of it for you.
I'm still not happy with the fact that I decided now to say something about all these changes because you're sitting in the middle seat rather than when you were sitting at the other seat. I'm good. I'm done. You gave me an answer. I'm not happy with it. But
however, I disagree with what you're saying because I have.
I've sat here since last year, and I used to come to these meetings a lot. Everything was cool. Then, in plain words, the crap hit the fan. All right. So started coming again. Not happy with the crap that goes on in these meetings. Is it going to change when you're up there? I don't know. I can only hope.
Well, let's be optimistic and
No, I won't be optimistic because I don't want to be disappointed. I'll just say I'll go with the flow, and I'll keep my fingers crossed. That's all I can do.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Adam Salberg. How are you doing, Mr. Salberg?
Good, very good. Adam Salberg, 10 Bergen Hill Road. The reason I wanted to come up to speak today, again, is with our new council president, and to really try to recap just the last year of the times that I've sat at both the public microphone and in the seat of the mayor. I've always spoken to the council really on the same topic, is to understand motives. Now that we're a year into it, and now that we have 3 council-at-large seats, halfway through, while I haven't discovered motives, I really have come to a conclusion, and I must say, council members Jedniak, Abramson, Kelly, Palumbo, and Smith, you haven't proven to me that you're capable of fulfilling the duties that you've been elected for. I went through a lot of minutes, I went through a lot of information, and I'm trying to see where we move the ball forward. What I did find is failed legal challenges, endless legal costs, and now no end in sight to new accusations of misdeeds being issued against us. The primary is in June. I plan to run. I plan to replace what I consider a bad fit for our town. It's nothing personal. I just don't think that the right people are in the right position. I'm hoping that we see a change, that Mr. Kelly, I do see what your motives are, and I see a positive change. We've got 6 months, but again, as we say at work, Good luck in your future endeavors, but I don't think your services are needed here anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salberg.
Council President, since Mr. Salberg is here in the audience, perhaps we should ask him about the secret meeting he had as mayor with Mr. Schmidt, which is the topic of the litigation that is currently hanging over the town.
If I may, Council President, Councilman Jared Peniak, we do have pending litigation. And, moving forward.
I see Mr. Salberg at the microphone. Perhaps you'd like to tell us about that meeting that he had.
Well, what I would love to say that...
Please. Mr. Lukowski, please.
Once again,
Please, Mr. Lukowski.
dragging the council, dragging the people that are supposed to be supporting the administration, working with our elected officials to move our town forward. Instead, again, with the smear tactics, with just doing everything but actually what you're elected to do. As I said, you are not capable of fulfilling the position you were elected to do, Mr. Jedinak. And I'm sorry that I have to say that.
Mr. Salberg, did you or did you not have a secret meeting with the township attorney, Mr. Puzio, Mr. Schmidt, just prior to the November 23rd meeting? The question is asked.
It's not being answered.
And we don't have an answer. So, Council President, perhaps we should compel that answer.
None of your business.
Next on the list, I have Mr. Liardi.
Michael Liardi, 19 North Brookside Drive. Perfect example of the change is until you opened your mouth, it's been pretty respectful here. Perfect example. Tucker's trying to turn a page and give us respect, and I'm hoping the audience can give him the respect until it's proven that it's not deserved. You've already proved it's not deserved. You can't keep order, and the lady brought up the point about not changing open to the public. Councilman Sackett asked for a motion, and Freelander asked for a motion that night when you were going into closed session to move open to the public before that. You wouldn't recognize them. That's the problem. It's not the council. It was the council president that wouldn't allow the council to contribute to it. Now, going back to last month with the meeting schedule that was presented to the council, from what it looked like from the previous council president, came up with the schedule, and it looked like everybody was blindsided by it. That's the impression we got in the audience. With that number of changes to a regular schedule that's been Tuesdays for years, if you enlisted the rest of the council and given them reasons, there might have been sound reasons for a change, but to blindside them that night, you're not going to get cooperation. And it shows that there was a change needed, and I'm glad to see there was a change. Enough of that. So one thing I wanted to bring up is the crosswalk by the White Meadow Lake Clubhouse. There is a street light there that is not as bright as an LED light would be. And also the crosswalk signs aren't the solar powered ones with the flashing lights.
Clubhouse or White Meadow Road? What area?
White Meadow, outside the clubhouse, if you're crossing from the clubhouse to the parking lot. It's
Okay.
White Meadow Road, where the speed bump is. There are crosswalk pedestrian signs, but they're not the ones that blink with the yellow. And it is a little bit dark there. And we have the speed bump coming one way, so they do slow down, but coming the other way, they really don't slow down until they're past the crosswalk area. And we do have a lot of seniors leaving meetings when it's dark. So it's just something to take a look at in the dark till you can kind of get a picture of what I'm thinking of, because it's a little dark there. And either have a brighter light or have the pedestrian signs with the flashing yellow.
Yeah, I agree.
It would just be a little more out there to get people to slow down.
Can I respond to that real quick?
Yes.
Mr. Scheer?
Yes, sir.
When we have the light that Mr. Larraty's talking about, and it being off of a pole, is it JCP&L's responsibility, the township's responsibility? Is it a private pole where it would be the... I'm sorry?
I'll reach out to JCP&L and see if we can get it changed to an LED and a little brighter.
What about the glowing
And then
crosswalk signs?
when we have the actual
Pedestrian
signs, thank you. Who is the responsibility of that? If it's something that we put on, are we responsible for it, or is it privately installed by White Meadow Lake or the POA?
Pedestrian crossing is ours.
Yeah.
And if we could just look at that as well?
Yes, not a problem.
And if you could, you want to give Mr. Sheard an email, and he can respond back to you directly, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor?
Sure. You know what? Send it to Pat. What I've set up is everything that comes through the administration, I like to have it go through Pat, so we can keep a punch list as to what's been addressed and what hasn't. It's a Pat Seeger.
Is the email on the
Yes.
website?
Just pseeger@rockawaytownship.org. First initial, last name,
Okay.
to get everybody that's there. And you can CC the mayor, maybe even Mr. Sheard, or just to Mrs. Seeger directly.
Yep, no problem. Thank you, and good luck.
That's it?
Yep.
Thank you. Next is Mrs. Linnell.
Deborah Linnell, 237 West Lakeshore Drive. Mr. Jedinak, I don't think you're incapable, like Mr. Salberg said. I think you're just completely unwilling because you don't see us as people worthy of respect. I said my piece on that subject at the last meeting, and my feelings haven't changed. So I just want to say that again. I want to thank Mayor Puzio for handling of the water situation the last couple days. You gave very frequent and informative updates, similar to how Mayor Dashton would have handled it, professionally, straightforward, and with residents' well-being as a priority. I had no doubt you would demonstrate as much caring for this town as he did, and you proved it once again over the last few days. Okay, I'm about to say something that's going to be wildly unpopular, I think, but I don't really give a crap, so I'm going to say it anyway. Okay. It's come to my attention that Ms. Clipperton has been and continues to be threatened and or harassed on a regular basis. Now, I've been vocal about my opinion of her competence in and her nutty salary for her position as clerk, but literally no one deserves this level of vitriol over it. I'm not sure if many people are aware of this, but honestly, it's disgusting that people can treat someone like this. So whoever is responsible, if you're listening, give this young woman a break and focus on the issues without getting personal. That's it.
I appreciate that, Ms. Linnell. Thank you.
Council President.
Mr. Jeniak?
Our business administrator acts as the HR person for the township. We have a claim of harassment against the acting clerk, and the business administrator needs to. Excuse me, I wasn't finished speaking.
You're done.
This is a personnel matter?
Our business administrator needs to address this as a personnel matter.
Jedinak, please. It's a personnel issue.
The claim needs to be investigated and addressed as a personnel matter.
That is grossly inappropriate.
Needed to be said.
Sorry.
You have a claim of harassment, Mr. Kelly. It needs to be addressed.
Mr. Jeniak, please. Thank you again for Ms. Linnell. Next on the list, and I apologize for saying the last name wrong, but I know we go by Mama Bear, but it's Mrs. Kleindienst? Kleindienst, I'm sorry. Come on up.
Kim Kleindienst, 8 Nokomis Avenue. If you haven't figured out by now, I'm pretty straightforward. I say what I mean, and there is usually no question about what I'm trying to say. To me, there's nothing worse than having to figure out what people are trying to say or trying not to say. For the last few months, I feel like I'm playing a game of who said what and why. So, Mr. Kelly, as the new council president, I'd like to figure out some of the things you've said and the motives behind them. In an article from the Daily Record on January 8th, the writer quotes you on several statements I would like to question. You said, "I didn't like how I was treated as a private citizen and don't want to treat the public the same way." Here's my problem with this statement. You were a council member while the public was being treated badly. You chose to comply and participate in Mr. Jedniak's treatment of administration, council members, and the public. You had every opportunity to question and admonish this behavior, and you chose not to. You and the other majority council members sat by and let this rancor continue. It seems like nothing other than a ploy to suddenly change and become this wonderfully thoughtful council member from someone who didn't seem to care about us before. I start to ask why. Mr. Kelly, you stated your first order of business was to rearrange the council meeting to move the public sessions so people can be heard and go home with their families. While this seems admirable, again I state you had the opportunity to do this while you were a council member. Mr. Friedlander tried in vain to get a motion out to do such a thing. He was denied the opportunity to bring this to a vote by the then council president. What did you, Mr. Palumbo, Ms. Abrahamson, Mrs. Smith, do while Mr. Sackett tried with Mr. Freelander to get this topic up for discussion? Nothing. You did nothing to stand up for the constituents you serve, nor the council members you work with. You allowed the council president you voted for to railroad council members from being able to represent their constituents. So again, I have to ask why. The article goes on to quote you as saying repairs to Peterson Field and infrastructure improvements are on your agenda. You mean the agenda that Mike Datchison was fighting for, and again, you and the majority 5 voted down? I'm seeing a pattern here. If these ideas are so worthy of being on your agenda, why didn't you support them when you were just a council member? And they were the agenda that the public and the minority council members and mayor were advocating for. Here's the one that really makes me wonder what on earth is going on. You use words like collaborate, not repeat last year, the arguments, the complaining back and forth is only a distraction that is not something I want to do. So to keep your reputation clean, it seems that former council president Jedniak has gone on the attack to do exactly these things. Your fellow council member sent out to the public 2 newsletters with what seemed like false claims against the mayor, as well as charging the township attorney of unethical conduct and clear conflict of interest. Well, isn't that the pot calling the kettle black? You and the other 4 council members have been found guilty of unethical behavior in your clear, reckless OTMA violations, which you were warned about by said attorney. So he was correct. You claim conflict of interest on the part of the attorney. I believe specifically 3 of you, including yourself, should recuse yourself from any decisions regarding the attorney, as he has been on the opposite side of the courtroom from each of you or a family member on multiple occasions. All of which, by the way, he prevailed. His advice and his defenses have been spot on. It makes sense that you want him out, only the reality is that he has beaten you in court multiple times and given advice that was ignored by you all, and you lost. To me, that sounds like the perfect attorney to represent Rockaway. So while I thank you for the appearance of the kinder, gentler council president, I advise you to remember the actions of your posse are attributed to you as well. While what you say seems to sound wonderful, what you don't say is equally as important. When you don't condemn Mr. Jedniak's attack on the mayor and the administration or his outbursts, you are guilty of the behavior as well. You will be held accountable to the truth of your words and actions if I have to stand here each month and do it myself. I may not be the brightest apple in the bunch, but I've started hanging out with some pretty smart people who know how to research and find out what's really going on behind the scenes in Rockaway. And what I've come to find out in the last few months is there are a lot of mama bears looking to protect Rockaway from hidden agendas. So beware, you never know who you're poking.
Let's just go down and just kind of hit a couple of things that are here. Maybe we can get some clarity. Maybe.
Sure.
Okay. One thing is that we talked about the OTMA issues and some of the claims that went out there in Mr. Jedniak's newsletters. Have you had an opportunity to actually read the complaint?
Yeah.
You did?
Mm-hmm. And I was on the other lawsuit as well. I have nothing, well, I shouldn't say I have nothing better to do. I work for my husband. So I have lots of time, and yes, I actually read those complaints.
And the most recent filings that we have on RNC 13118, and we have MRSL.
Not the smartest apple in the bunch.
No. Listen.
I'm just, don't throw numbers at me. I don't know what that means.
But I believe that you are intelligent, and you are smart, and you're well choreographed with what you write. But in those complaints, the most recent ones that we have, and I'm just giving you the docket numbers, I figured you received it. Where'd you get the complaints?
I was part of one of the other lawsuits.
Well,
so
the most recent ones, and I
I haven't read the recent ones.
Oh, okay, but
No.
that's what the newsletter was a reference to.
There was a lot in that newsletter that is inappropriate. How about let's start by calling Mayor Puzio, Puzio. That should be condemned. If you're talking about an environment of cooperation, that's disrespectful. So you should call out your fellow council members when they are disrespectful. If we're being called out for our disrespectful behavior, I think the same should be held for the council members.
Right.
By not calling him out and accusing Mayor Puzio of something and the township attorney, those aren't just happy, sweet news. Oh, I'm bringing to your attention. Those are attacks. And they're deliberate and they're rude. To constantly call someone by his last name, I would not call any of you. I called you Mr. Kelly. I don't say Kelly.
Yo.
I'm just saying, you're responsible for the decorum here and what they say outside. And by not admonishing Mr. Jedniak, even now as he is being rude and calling out, I would have gotten thrown out. The cops would have been over and you would have said, remove Mrs. Kleindienst.
Yeah, I'm not going to have you removed, but I asked just, it was a simple question, if you reviewed those two complaints.
No.
No, I know that, and that was it, but you made a comment on it from the...
My comment was about, one, the claims against Mayor Puzio,
Right.
and that he called the mayor, or the attorney, unethical and conflict of interest. That's fine. I don't know whether it's true or not.
Right.
My point is, you guys are unethical and have conflicts of interest with the attorney. That's the point. I'm not talking about validity of the case. I'm saying it's the pot calling the kettle black. What you're accusing him of, you all do. You should recuse yourself because you have been on the receiving end of a loss to him. Every advice he gave you that you ignored, we won. You lost. There are other cases in your history where he has been, from what I understand, the lawyer on the opposite side of the courtroom, and he won.
Not all of them, Mrs. Yeah, not all of them.
Some.
But that
I'm just saying, if you're telling him he has a conflict of interest, I'm just pointing out that you do as well.
We do have litigation as far as one aspect of it, but that doesn't create the conflict of it. And again, I have my own personal counsel. And you know, I disagree with some of the stuff that's there, and we can agree to disagree, right?
That's fine.
That's what's going on.
I'm just pointing out my perspective.
And
My perspective is you have conflict of interest as well, and should, I believe, recuse yourself from some of these things.
Yeah, unfortunately, I disagree with that, but that's okay. That's okay.
That's fine.
And then the is that basically the one word that you coined was complicit, right? That was
yep.
Your coin phrase. That's
one of them. Yep.
But because you don't see something at one time, doesn't automatically assume that it's never happened or questioned or asked about or try to change it. You're limited on certain things. So, in respect to the open public portion in OPMA and OPRA, whatever, please don't decide that on something that you didn't see at one particular time.
Okay, but you know what? I saw Mr. Freelander
and you even know,
and Mr. Sackett.
Mr. Sackett, there was something I said that they should have the motion to be able to have heard in a roll call taken. The council president controls that. I do not. And I'm sorry that...
Who voted for that, council president?
I did, prior to the issue that was there, yes.
Yes.
We did.
Hmm?
So, I mean, those are the questions that you have. Hopefully, moving forward.
I hope so.
You know, I mean, there's a lot of criticism that goes on with Facebook and bashing and all that kind of stuff. And
although I do get turned in for bullying on Facebook, I tend not to be one of those people who are...
I don't participate in that end of it, so...
Good for you.
Yeah. And
I'd advise other members not to do that either.
I have my own political page, my own personal page, and it's really positive stuff that I put on there. I try to. But in any event, thank you for the comments that you made.
Thank you.
And if you have anything else, the next council meeting, please bring it up there. Councilman Jenny, this is very difficult, I'm sorry.
Council President, Ms. Kleindienst referred to litigation, recent litigation that she said she had not seen. For anyone who is interested, I happen to have a copy of it here. I have a copy of the screenshots from Mrs. Hollenbeck's inbox that shows our township attorney communicating to her in a way that is inappropriate. I have a copy in the next exhibit. There's also here which
we
showed
discussing
a
pending
document
litigation,
that was
Council
prepared
President?
by the township.
This should be
Do I have-
foreclosed immediately.
We do. I
It
think,
seems that Mr. Jedniak doesn't care, but he's perilously
I understand
threatening the town's position.
please, if anything, you have in your possession a copy of the complaints that is public record that people can get. Going through the complaint here while we have pending litigation, I don't think is a good idea.
Council President, I have 2 exhibits here that are of interest.
Council,
Any member of the public that would like to see the complaint, and
can we move on?
I'll be here later.
Thank you.
He was talking, nobody heard what he said.
I'm just going to state it real quick. I know that, and Mr. Tahan, please. If anybody wishes to review the complaints that are out there, they are public record. I will make them noted on the numbers. The docket number on one is C-131-18. Do you have that, Ms. Stegman? And the other is going to be MRSLOO2535-18. Right? That's it? Thank you. Next on the list is Mr. Schmidt.
John Schmidt, Gloucester City, New Jersey, County of Camden. Good evening. Some of what I already was going to talk about, somebody already had mentioned. I won't repeat that. So I'll go to my point number 2. Follow-up from last meeting, I raised an issue about your code, where...
I'm sorry, can you hold it or
Bobby,
pull it out?
real quick, hold on, Mr. Schmidt. Could you raise that microphone for Mr. Schmidt? Thank you.
We should have a podium there for people's papers.
Well, it goes up and down. Oh, yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, thanks, Bobby.
Last meeting, I had asked a question regarding your township code, question about the township attorney, singular, the word he, referring to an individual, whereas for the last, at least this year, past few years, a corporation was appointed, entity, a firm. Has anybody got an answer to that question that I raised at the last meeting regarding that one?
Can you just cite the code that you're referencing?
Your township code
Yep.
talks about township attorney and uses the word he.
Do you have the code?
No, I do not. Not on me.
Okay.
And the question is, it uses the word he. Okay, that's a person.
Right.
Whereas the appointment that has been made on the record was for a firm. Can a firm be a person? Is a firm or group of attorneys, can that be a township attorney, which is defined as an individual? That was my question last meeting. I was wondering if anyone has a chance to look into that.
Mr. Yatrofano, is that something that you can answer from the question of last?
Well, number one, I wasn't aware that anybody requested an opinion on that. If at some point the administration or council requests an opinion, we'll be happy to provide one.
Is there any information you can give the member of the public now?
No.
Follow up in 2 to 4 weeks, maybe I can, would you have an answer in 2 to 4 weeks?
We'll look into it. We'll take a look at it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. And as I said, we're trying to codify some of our ordinances.
Oh, it's...
We realize, I've been here since November, we realize that there needs to be adjustments. I addressed it at the last meeting. We're going to work on updating our ordinances. It takes time. Some of them are old and antiquated, and we're going to try to get everything up to speed at some point.
And we request patience moving forward because of...
Yes.
It's.
And I talked about that
Yeah,
last
we're talking
meeting.
1971.
Yeah, however-
A lot of our ordinances are
Correct.
1954, 52.
If I may, just,
Yeah, please, Vice President.
I just think Mr. Schmidt just wants an answer to that one question, not a total revamping of that code. You just want to know, when you represent a firm, when you're stating a firm in the code, is a firm now, and then you refer to it in the same paragraph as he, is that's what you're clarifying, what you want clarification on, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure we got that straight. We don't need a lot of research on that. We just need an answer.
I've been also working on about 3 different projects, and I have a couple questions regarding some of the some things that I have reviewed. Some are very minor, some might be a little more complicated. just some things that I pointed out. The November 1st invoice for the township attorney. On 10/22, there's a billing entry by CAP, which I believe would be Carl A. Perone. It says, conference with Carl Perone, Esquire, re-election issues in Schmidt. So Carl Perone is billing to have a conference with Carl Perone?
Say that again.
There's a billing entry.
Okay.
Carl A. Perone.
Okay.
It says conference with Carl Perone.
Okay. Oh, so he's billing, in other words, the way it's written, it states he's
Is that
billing-
accurate, or is there an error in
Okay.
Can you just, what are you actually looking at? What do you have?
The attorney invoices.
So they don't-
Actually, you know what?
I understand what you're saying. He's billing himself to talk to himself.
You know what, could you just give it to Bob when you end there?
That's what it sounds like. If I'm correct in understanding that, right? That he's billing himself to talk conference with, it's a bill from Mr. Perone.
I'm so sorry.
Conferencing Mr. Perone is what Mr. Schmidt is saying. So maybe it's a typo? I don't know. I'll have to see it.
If you just give us a second, I'm sorry, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you. Issue 1. Conference with Carl Perone, Esquire, RE election, issues, and Schmidt.
So I'm on page 2, the one circled.
And that would be your indication of page 2, where it's page 14 up on top?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, I've numbered all these pages. So that's my question on page 2.
I see what you're saying.
Either it happened or it was an error, which if it's an error, my next question would be from page 3, how often are errors made on these invoices? You can see on 10/1, for $1,534.50, there were erroneous entries in a previous invoice that was credited back. Who's reviewing these before they get paid? Page 4, this is on 10/22. Page 5, there's a receipt and review of email and attachment from Councilman Puzio, in parentheses Schmidt, from Carl Perone. I'm assuming that's regarding my communication. That was my question on that, and if so, thank you to the mayor. On page 6, there were 3.3 hours billed by JMI, $544.50, which I can only assume is the Open Public Meetings Act letter that I wrote on the 22nd. On page 7, my question is, there's a billing entry for $1,336.50, which includes attendance at council meeting, a post-meeting conference with John Schmidt. I would like to know when that meeting occurred, who was at that meeting, and what was discussed. Because after the meeting, and I have my bank statement if you would like to see it, I left and I went to the Hibernia Diner and I ate alone.
What page?
Page 7.
7 is a duplicate of 6, isn't it?
No. There's no date on that.
See the question mark on page 7.
Yes, it is a duplicate. Because it's a separate question.
Okay.
That's why I did a different page.
Oh, okay.
Page 8 goes on to my issue number 2. Issue 9, or page 9, there's an entry on 10/11 billed by Carl Perone, which includes read brief from Mills. Who is Mills? Is that John Mills, Esquire? And what brief is it? Is it the brief that was filed by Mr. Mills in the Salberg litigation, which on page 10, Wednesday, October 10th, 2018 at 4:39 p.m., from Carl Perone to John Mills, John Iacofano, Mary Hollenbeck, and Lisa Salberg, just something I redrafted after speaking with the Mary and John Mills. If you go on to page 12, 24 minutes after that email was sent, on Wednesday, October 10th at 5:04 p.m., from Carl Perone to John Mills with a copy to John Yachafano. John, attached is the appellate brief from John Schmidt. He is the random gadfly from South Jersey who argued before Minkowitz. So I guess it's nice that your professionals call people names. His brief contains issues in law that my draft did not address. So did the township attorney write that brief? That's my question. And also, why was my work product that I wrote distributed by an officer of this township without my permission? I wrote that OPMA draft brief. It somehow got in the hands of your township's attorneys, and then it was distributed to an agent of this township. I would like to know why. I spent 15 hours on that brief, not to have it bantered about, have it used only for those who received it, in our case against the township and against the appeal. Finally, issue number 3 is regarding a recent OPA request I made for 3 things. I submitted my OPA request.
Is that subject to litigation?
What, this OPA request?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
I waited 7 business days patiently for an answer to only learn that, once again, I'm not being told whether documents exist or they don't exist. When somebody submits an OPA request, the custodian of records has 7 days to give the document, deny the document based on an exception, or request an additional time if it's a large request, records are in storage, or needs review for redactions. This is the second time, first one's in litigation, this is the second one, this is not in litigation, that I just get a response saying, oh, well, I'm just being told that it's going to a special counsel. Well, does the document exist or not? So I had Alvin Romero, Esquire, write a letter Friday, January 18th at 3:11 p.m., in which I got a response to item number 1. I dropped number 2, which left the whole thing at number 3, which is 1 document, 1 email. That's probably no more than a page. My question on that is, my attorney wanted a response by the end of the day. There was none. I don't want to do another lawsuit. I'm kind of getting tired of them, and I would like to move on. Can I get this record by tomorrow at noon so we don't have litigation? And the record was an email sent by Mr. Perone to an individual regarding the recall of the former council president, Councilman Jedniak. It ends this: bada book, bada boom. Bada book, bada boom. Is this normal behavior? Page 17. Is this normal behavior? Is this how your professionals write?
Who wrote that?
Page 7.
Who wrote that?
Who's asking?
I'm asking.
I'm sorry, Council President.
Page 17.
So that was written by Mr. Perone?
Yes.
Those words.
Is this the full email?
Yeah, on page 16 is my OPA request. Second paragraph is the OPA request that I submitted. Page 17 is the evidence that I have that it exists. I don't want to speak for Ms. Hollenbeck. Ms. Hollenbeck is willing to talk to me about stuff, but she doesn't really want to. She'd rather me get the documents through OPRA legally so I can have, if I want to give them out or do anything with them, I can.
So this is yet another OPA request that's being denied for a record that actually does exist.
Well, it looks like we're going down that path, and I would not like to go down that path. But my patience, with all due respect, in terms of how this township functions with OPA requests, is wearing a little thin.
Yeah. Agreed.
Can I have a recap of your, I'm sorry, are you done?
I'm done, yes. Thank you for listening to me. I hope, I don't raise these questions because I am a little upset about 1 or 2 things, but I'm not raising these questions because I think they're baseless. I think they're important. That's why I'm raising them.
What you have on there, because going through the dialogue and through the pages and myself even interrupting on the one page that was a duplicate, but you had a point that was made. Can you hit me again with your points? I mean, I got 3, exist or they don't exist, special counsel.
I mean, the first one is questions regarding attorney invoices. Are these errors in the attorney invoice? I mean, and if they are, okay, but even if they were an error, who then on the township is double checking? I mean, you paid $66 for someone to be able to have a conversation with themselves.
Let me see if I can address each one at a time so we don't get confused here. Mrs. Seeger, when it comes to invoices, regarding attorney invoices or any invoices, could you tell me the process of what actually takes place?
Depends on which legal person is providing the bill.
Well, in this case, it's questioning the firm of
Achapano. I would review them.
And is there somebody else that reviews them?
I'm not the only one who signs them.
Who are the individuals that sign them? What are the mechanisms?
They would be sent to the attorney to sign.
His own bills he would have to sign?
He has to sign the voucher.
Okay.
And then the voucher is given to the department, and they would come to me. I would look them over, see if they seem reasonable. And then it goes to the mayor to sign, and then it goes to the finance, Lisa, the CFO, to sign and pay the bills.
And then each time that a signature is required, is it the responsibility of the signature bearer to go through the invoices again as a double or a triple or a quadruple check?
As much as they know of it. If they weren't involved in the conversation, they couldn't say they were. Like some of these conversations, I'm not involved with all of them.
Right.
But most of the time, they're correct.
Well, like an obvious one in this case, having a conversation with yourself.
Then I'm going to say I probably overlooked it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I probably thought it was a mistake and
Right.
it was meaningful.
Inadvertent error was nothing that you had as far as an intentional goes.
Correct.
And at the time that these invoices, they were in October. Who was, the mayor signed them at that time?
He should have
Okay.
before it was paid.
Council President, shouldn't we have the attorney confirm whether that's an error or not?
I think we can go through
I
the
think-
billing on it. He doesn't have it, in all fairness.
No, he got a copy.
We'll look into it.
Right, you're going to look
Yes,
into it and see what we got?
absolutely.
Thank you. Who is our special counsel? Do we have a special counsel for
We
Rockaway
have
Township?
several.
Or, I'm sorry, conflicts counsel or special counsel?
We have several. It depends on who the attorney assigns the cases to with the approval of the mayor.
But we don't have a case on this. This is just an Oprah request?
Case on what?
We don't have a case. I said this is just an Oprah request.
No, he moved on to another.
Oh, you're talking about another subject?
Well, I'm just hitting on questions that I have from Mr. Schmidt. We have,
If he submits an Oprah request, that would be the process that Ms. Clipperton can answer. I don't know her process.
I got these documents, sorry to interject, I got these documents through Oprah.
okay. So the question would be is who was the special counsel addressing these Oprah requests? What's the date of the Oprah request?
There's no,
The date?
end of November, December?
Ms. Seeger's going to look into this, and she'll get you the answers once she has a little bit of time to research. I think it's best that way than doing this on the fly.
Okay, well, could the following questions be answered? As to the post-meeting conference with John Schmidt on page 7?
Which is yourself.
Right, there was a meeting after the council meeting, I'd like to know.
Ms. Seeger will look into this and then get back to you on that.
Council President.
Finally, on page 9.
Well, let's address
stay
the
with
one.
that one.
And Mr.
I'm just going to write them down as he does.
Yeah, no, I know. But if you recall that we had on the 23rd.
I was on vacation that week.
Okay, Mr.
So
Mayor.
I have to look into this.
Mr. Mayor, on the 23rd of October, you were a sitting councilor at that particular time, and Mr. Salver was a mayor at the time, interim mayor.
What's the point of the question?
And I'll get to that point.
Yeah, you can get to it.
But I know. I'm just trying to resolve this real quick. But there's a billing on here of a pre-conference meeting with Mr. Schmidt.
Excuse me, it says post.
Post-conference with Mr. Schmidt. But, at the meeting, nobody said that they've ever...
We're going to look into these issues that you presented.
But just so we can reconfirm, though, you've never had a conversation with Mr. Schmidt.
We're going to look into these issues. I'm not here to answer questions.
Okay.
I'm here to help facilitate the questions that Mr. Schmidt's asking. I'm not going to turn this. I'm going to set the ground rules right now. This is not going to be a congressional hearing and an interrogation in a police station. We're here to move town business forward. We're not here to have vitriol and people vacillating back and forth as to what may and may not have happened. There's an agenda that we have here, and although I appreciate the public's input, we do have town business to move forward, and I don't feel that this has anything to do with town business. So when you hear me say I'm not going to dignify a question or give a response, it's because I think it's going to be deleterious to Rockaway Township. We have a person up here speaking right now who has an active lawsuit, so I'm a little bit cautious to answer anything. So we're going to take our time. We're not going to run around like our hair's on fire, and we're going to answer the questions in sequence, slowly, methodically, and we're going to move the town forward.
I will just say three things briefly. The brief regarding Mr. Mills, I guess we won't know what brief that is tonight. The Oprah issue, I would like to avoid litigation. And this council has this is executive, legislative. Two beautiful things about the legislative branch. Purse strings, oversight. I talked about oversight on November 16th. You have the power to ask the questions. You have two things on your agenda tonight. We're dealing with money. I'm not sure if the council agrees with me. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I think before any money is authorized, before any money is spent, questions are answered. Until then, you should consider voting no.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you.
Council President, we have a number of unanswered questions. My suggestion is that, Council President, it'd be great to be able to speak without the crowd.
Please.
I'll wait.
Give me my chance. Aren't I up next? Mr. Jenny, I can talk later, right? No.
Well, I'm just going to wrap it up.
Am I next on the list? Because Mr. Jenny
I know you're. You're up. I appreciate, Mrs. Platt.
You're
up right after this.
Great. So let's go.
All right. Well, I'm just letting him finish, and then you'll be up there as well.
If we can get through.
Go ahead.
I'm just waiting for the Mrs. Platts to stop speaking.
She's okay. Just, Mr. Child. We really got to rock and roll.
Yeah, I agree. Council President, we have a number of unanswered questions that Mr. Schmidt has asked that have been unanswered. I believe that the council should use its powers to request those questions be answered by the administration under the powers that it has under the municipal charter law. And you have a copy of the relevant section in the quick reference guide that's there. So my suggestion would be that I have some of the questions listed, that one of us make a motion, someone else second, and we have a vote to have those questions answered by the administration.
I would suggest that we do everything. Let's go through the open public portion.
This evening or not?
Yes, we can look at
I will wait.
evening, but
I'll make a note.
Let's get through the open public portion. I mean, there's a lot of people that have some questions that are here.
Thank you, Council President.
Mrs. Platts, come on up.
Right on, brother.
Just give me 1 second. I get the time. Not a timer, but I just want to see what time you start.
Well, I just hope I get as much time as Mr. Schmidt.
I know that you police yourself.
Only for you.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Kathleen Platts, 2 Valhalla Way. I haven't been here in a while, so I'm happy to hear that the 5-minute limit is gone, because I only hope to get as much as you just gave to our non-resident Mr. Schmidt. I'm here partially because it's my understanding that all of you are trying to interfere with litigation that you're not a party to. And since I've been here last year, over and over, particularly Mr. Jedniak, but also Mr. Kelly, feels the need to act as though you have any understanding of the justice system or the legal system, despite the fact that none of you are attorneys. I think you're aware I am. So let me just school you a bit. When you are not a party to litigation, you don't have standing. You don't have a voice in that litigation. Ms. Clipperton, it's my understanding that at the direction of Mr. Kelly, you sent a letter directly to the judge. I don't know what making sandwiches a good to go taught you. No, I'm not done. Let me finish. You can interfere when I'm done.
Mrs. Platts, I don't understand. But I'm going to give you your time. It's not a problem.
Well, then give me my time, because we can have an interaction when I'm done talking.
But I want to catch the moment, though. So
we can catch the moment in a moment.
I know, but you're going to have your time. I'm not going to take away anything. That's
great. Let's go.
But what's confusing to me is that we received a confidential memo today. I got it a little after 4 o'clock. Confidential memo. How do you know about it?
I'm aware of what's going on in litigation because I can communicate with the court.
How do you know? Because it wasn't part of the court. It was an internal memo between our legal counsel for the township and individual council members.
I've been asking questions and I've been...
How did you get that information?
What are you worried about? Is that true? Is it true that Ms. Clipperton...
Excuse me.
No, I'm not answering your question. Answer my question. Is it true that Ms. Clipperton... I'm not answering your question.
Council President,
you received...
No.
Excuse me.
It's my understanding that Ms. Clipperton...
I'm concerned that you received communication from our legal counsel. That's
I didn't receive anything from your legal counsel.
I didn't waive my privilege.
What privilege? You have no privilege.
You're very...
What? This is what you don't understand. You have no privilege.
So the communication...
I didn't talk to your attorney. Your only privilege is between you and your attorney.
How did you get the memo?
I didn't get any memo.
But you're reciting it right now.
No, I'm not reciting anything. It's my understanding that Ms. Clipperton sent a letter to the court. Is that not true?
Where did you get the information from?
What does that have to do with anything? I'm in communication. I can be in communication with the court. I can reach out to the court. My sources in the Morris County Superior Court are none of your business.
It's not an e-court matter, though. So
it doesn't matter. Just because it's not an e-court matter doesn't mean that I don't receive information relating to information that's being sent to the court.
So you're not going to divulge who gave you that information?
No.
Okay.
I'm not divulging it. I'm not talking to any communication you received from the court. Is it not true, Mr. Kelly, since we're having a back and forth, that Ms. Clipperton sent a letter to the court in regards to this litigation of Mr. Schmidt that you're not a party to? Is that correct?
Well, we're...
Yes or no? You're asking me questions.
Township is named. I directed the clerk to write the letter to the court.
Exactly. That's my point.
As the letter
so
states...
you are not the township. The township is the executive and our township attorney. So you are represented by Mr. Yachafano, whether you like it or not, sir. And when we talk about the fact that all of you are jumping up and down, Mr. Jedniak, running your pen away, when you are jumping up and down about conflicts of interest, it's pretty hypocritical, because the idea that you are claiming that Mr. Yachafano has a conflict of interest in a litigation that you're not a party to, you have no standing. I'm trying to explain to you the concept of standing. If you want to intervene, file an application to intervene. You know what? Funny enough, Ms. Salberg and others, including me, as citizens, filed a lawsuit. We didn't need to spend anybody's money here. We didn't ask for township money to be spent. We walked in and we fought for our rights and we won. And you know what? Why don't you do the same thing? Because it's my understanding that you think that you somehow or another should have counsel in that. You do. You have Mr. Yachafano whether you like it or not. And the idea...
Another confidential memo? How?
It's not confidential memos. If you're writing to the court advising them that you think that you have standing, don't you want counsel?
There was no question of standing.
There is standing. If you're writing to the court indicating that you think that you have a right to be heard, that's standing, brother. That's standing. That means that you think that you have standing in that court to be heard. So if you want standing in that court, my concern is, as a citizen, that you are going to ask that we should spend some sort of money to get you an attorney. And all I'm suggesting to you is, you're jumping up and down, and already, Mr. Jedniak, it's not tea leaves. You guys are not that difficult to, think 3 steps ahead. I'm sorry, despite the fact that you think this is a chess game. It's pretty clear with Mr. Jedniak sitting here going on and on about exhibits that you're making it out, I don't care what his name is, that you're claiming that you should have that there's some conflict of interest in terms of our town attorney representing the town. So, that's between Mr. Schmidt and the court. That has nothing to do with you.
No, and if I may, just real quick, do you believe, though, you've read the complaints, I'm assuming then, right?
Keep going.
I'm asking you yes or no. Just
Yes.
okay. I can't read your mind. So
Well, you don't have to read my mind.
So you've read the complaints itself. You've read the initial one, which is pro se litigants that are there, Schmidt and Hollenbach versus Rockaway Township.
I don't know the docket numbers by heart like you do, but yeah, I'm aware of the lawsuit.
And then you're also about the Ober matter too, that's Schmidt versus Rockaway Township and the acting clerk.
Yeah, funny enough, Mr. Schmidt filed the lawsuit with me. I didn't realize he was in bed with you, but yeah, okay.
You're out. I mean, that's really.
Well, no, I'm not, because you came out at a council meeting and said that you had aligned interests. It just so happened you have the same attorney, and funny enough, he's arguing essentially your arguments to try to get your attorney out. See, what really happened here, let's get to the bottom of this, is number one.
Mrs. Platts, I wasn't done questioning what you had on it. If you give me, we're having a discussion.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
But you've actually read the complaints on both of them.
I answered you already.
Right. And in the complaints, you saw there was an accusation of something that took place with the town attorney that could also lead of him being a defendant or a witness.
Well, I would imagine that's up to Mr. Schmidt to make that argument. That's what you don't quite
You're
get.
an attorney, though. You don't think that
I am an attorney. So my point is, that's up to Mr. Schmidt to argue that there is a conflict. He has the ability as a plaintiff to argue a conflict. Let that happen. Don't spend, all I'm asking is, don't spend our money. If you think that you need to be a party and you need to protect a pro se, it's funny enough, when I was a pro se litigant, none of you seemed to get involved, right? None of you seemed to defend us. None of you tried to get an attorney involved on our behalf, funny enough. But when Mr. Schmidt is a pro se litigant in a matter that somehow or another you're politically aligned, suddenly as an entity, you're coming together to suggest that somehow you have standing. Let me just break it down. You don't have standing.
Real quick, though.
Get an attorney on your own. That's all I'm saying.
Mrs. Platt, would it be unethical for a defense attorney to assist the plaintiffs against him?
Look,
if you were representing your client,
I'm not engaging in hypotheticals that you think support your position. No, I'm answering you. I'm not engaging in nonsense hypotheticals. You know what? Let me turn that around. Do you think that a person who's sitting on a political board such as a council should engage in any decision making regarding an attorney that has prosecuted him for criminal acts, that has defended against lawsuits he's brought, that has prosecuted him for code violations? And I think that's actually your relationship with Mr. Iacofano and his firm. And also, that's a conflict of interest. So that's actually what we call a per se conflict. That means that you have had a position that is adverse to each other. He has prosecuted you in criminal court. He has defended against lawsuits you've brought. He has prosecuted you for code violations. You have had personal positions adverse to him. There is no clearer conflict than between you and Mr. Iacofano. Mr. Jedniak himself had an attorney who has advised that he felt that during the recall litigation that Mr. Iacofano was conflicted. So Mr. Jedniak is conflicted.
Mr. Kelly, that's yet another communication that Ms. Thurr has access to.
No, it's not.
Platts, I'm sorry.
It's funny enough you're using my name that I practice under. Maybe you're doing some research, because my point to you is you're hypocritical, because there is a conflict between you and Mr. Iacofano. Last year there was a conflict. You had brought litigation regarding health care. You had asked that the health care benefits of specifically Mr. Quinn was stripped. While that litigation was pending, or there soon after, there was an ordinance that you were advised to not vote on in regards to stripping health benefits. It's my understanding, I think you even got, at the time, I think there was a representation, you had been given an opinion that there was a conflict. You voted on it. So there is no doubt that you are in conflict with Mr. Iacofano, You want that hypothetical? Answer that to me. If someone's been prosecuted by an attorney, when someone has been prosecuted on code violations, when someone has brought lawsuits that have been challenged and defended by an attorney, isn't that a conflict of interest, sir?
Conflict there, Mrs.
None. None whatsoever. Okay, I think you've made my point. The bottom line is I am asking that instead of continuing nonsense, because I think that if you even took a poll of this room, let alone a poll of the municipality, people are not worried. People are not worried about this. This is not a concern.
No, that's your opinion, though. That's no answer for me.
No. I'm talking about the public. Obviously, it's a concern for you. You guys are obsessed with it.
I don't think
it's not a concern for the municipality. What we're concerned about is our town, is our facilities, is our recreational opportunities for our kids, is our fields, is our parks. I stood here a year ago asking you guys to invest in the infrastructure of our parks and our fields, and you all voted against it. You stripped $100,000. It is true. You stripped $100,000 from it.
Not true.
Okay, let's go back. I'll play it back for you. That's entirely true. Whether you want to give us water or not, it's true. So this year, all I'm asking is get rid of the nonsense, and start caring about our kids. Because there are people on this council who are literally attacking citizens for free speech, bringing criminal complaints for simply acting. Let's get back to decorum. Let's get back to treating our citizens with some respect and permitting them to speak openly. I am simply asking that this council just please worry about the town. Stop worrying about your little political nonsense. And, you know, this idea of the softer, gentler council, we're not buying it. I know you're running for mayor. Good for you. Good luck. But the whole let's be nice and, you know, kumbaya, we're not buying it. So stop it with the nonsense. There is no conflict. You and Mr. Schmidt, I think, are the ones having secret meetings. And please, just care about our kids a little bit. Maybe you're the only one that has one, but you don't act like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Clapp.
Might as well.
Mr.
Thank you.
Really, we got to.
I'm not going to mention anyone by names, okay? But I don't think it's appropriate. Set this fact straight. Me and Mr. Kelly we have one of my Oprah attorneys has represented Mr. Kelly. That's it. And I never met Mr. Kelly until September 14th, and I was totally disgusted. But I said, give him a chance. I'm on issues, but that was just way out of line. Decorum. Thank you.
Thank you, Schmidt.
Council President, we do have the ability to compel answers to some of those questions that were asked.
I'm sure you're aware of it. Next is Mr. Dio. Please come up, Mr. Dio.
Hey, Bob.
Bob, can you?
Thank you, Bob. I actually have a few things, and I wasn't really planning on commenting on it, but the issue come up about conflicts of interest. I'm a professional, and I don't want to get into it with the attorney who was up here before, but in my profession, the conflict of interest has to do with the professional. When I'm in an engagement, the first thing that the attorney says to me, do you know any of the defendants? Do you know any of the plaintiffs? Do you know any of the attorneys? Do you have any connection at all with any of the participants in the matter? If you do, you're disqualified. And so I think the issue of conflict has to do with Mr. Iacovano and not with the council. That's my opinion. All right. The second thing is, I'm talking about the, I've gotten the copies of all the attorney bills myself, and I'm currently reviewing them. And I have similar questions that Mr. Schmidt has as to what's in those bills, who approves them. I mean, we're talking $400,000, right? And that should be looked at very, very carefully. And so I have some concerns about those bills. I don't know what the procedure is. I don't know how they do it. I heard what Mrs. Sager said, but I think that greater attention needs to be paid to those bills. As far as the...
Real quick, what is your profession?
I'm a CPA.
Thank you.
Now, the other thing, with respect to Mr. Iacofano as attorney, I know I'm in the minority of this room, but I reread Mayor Pucio's comment in the newsletter, and I really think that Mr. Pucio is earnest in his wanting to move this town forward. But one of the things he said, he was looking forward to working with the council. Well, it's obvious to me, based on the vote, and I know you have minorities, you got, and I heard someone say there's click votes here, there's click votes here. Of course, that's politics. But the thing is, Mr. Iacofano is here in default. He does not have the support of the majority of the council that was currently elected. Now, that could change with the election coming up. I understand that. But currently, he's in default. He's here only by default. He's not here at the wishes of the majority of the council members. And I think that Mayor Puccio and Mr. Iacofano should reconsider his appointment to represent us in Rockaway Township. Now, talking about money, I do have a question. Your ordinance, or the administrative code, 2-3.1 specifically says that the mayor is required to submit a preliminary budget to the council by January 15th. Subject to being modified once information is given as to the funds that are available to carry out that budget. And the...
Mr. Waters, please. Thank you.
The administrative code is very detailed as to what is supposed to be in that preliminary budget. My question is, was the preliminary budget submitted to the council by January 15th as dictated and mandated by our administrative code? Now, I understand, Mayor Puccio.
It was not.
It was not. Okay. Now, if it was not, all right, I think that the administration and council, and I heard Mayor Puccio said this before, and I laud you on it. I think there needs to be a review of your administrative code, because if you're not going to follow it, change it. Last meeting, I mentioned that the organization meeting was required to be had on the first Tuesday, and it wasn't. Required is different than may. Now, if the administrative codes are not correct, change them. Move forward. Let's not get into a harangue and create other opportunities for litigation.
And now, Mr. Dio, that was...
Now, I have the same question as Mr. Schmidt had with respect to the attorney. When I read that the administrative code 2.63, it's specifically the way I read it, and I'm not an English major, it appears that it's supposed to be an individual, not a firm. And there's a reason for that, in my understanding. The reason is because that person then has to be held accountable for what's going on and then what opinions he gives to the administration and to the council. Again, if something is not right in the code, change it. Let's stop doing the things that are creating opportunity for further litigation. I reviewed some of the attorney bills just to try to get a concept of what's going on. Because of technical violations of Yeah, the Open Public, thank you very much. The Open Public Meeting Act, this township has spent tens of thousands of dollars because of technical violations. Now, you are correct, the attorney here said, none of you are attorneys as far as I know. You don't have expertise in government. You need to rely on your experts. The experts are who? Your attorney and your administration. Now, I went through the minutes, and I saw that the minutes that created a major problem in one of the litigations has been going on for a while. I read the invoices clearly state that the attorney and his firm, or he does, reviews the agendas in advance, reviews the minutes, reviews all of this stuff. Now, if they weren't correct, how come this wasn't brought to the attention of the council to avoid a lawsuit that week that spent tens of thousands of dollars? I just don't get it. Now, again, talking about the budget, I appreciate that Mayor Puccio just stepped in, so I could excuse him for not having it in by January 15th. But I can tell you this. There was an article in the paper, and I'm sure some of you saw it, that did an analysis of our taxes in this state, real estate taxes. Rockaway Township real estate taxes over the last 20 years have gone up 207%. That's over 10%. I can tell you this, incomes haven't gone up 10% a year. Real estate appraisal values haven't gone up that much. How come our budgets keep going up, up, and up? Now, the other thing, I've been in the current house for 25 years. My real estate taxes have gone up 230% in the last 25 years. And I can tell you, my house has not improved in value 230%. And although I make good money, it has not gone up to the extent that the percent has. Now, last year, there was an effort made. I don't care whether people say it was just moving numbers around. But last year, we did have a reduction in taxes, and I appreciate that. All right? I just hope that this year, when you're reviewing the budget, that we do some effort to reduce it and save us money. I'm sorry I took more than 5 minutes.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Mr. Dio.
Yay, it's done.
Mr. Waters, come on up. Thank you, sir. Yeah, you're the next contestant. Seneca, yeah.
Jim Waters, 48 Seneca Avenue. Yeah. I thought I was a grumpy old man. Stay off my lawn. It's good to see a full council here tonight. We haven't had that in a while. It's always good to see that full audience as well, and a full administration, which is also nice. Also pleased to note the last couple of meetings that the council, even though they don't acknowledge everything that gets said at this microphone, obviously pays attention, because we've heard an initiative to post official notices on more than one bulletin board, which is something that was brought up last year, and I'm glad to see that that's been done as well. As well as the modification of the 5-minute rule when it needs to be modified, not just so we can stand here and tell jokes, but if we really have a sentence we need to finish, we're allowed to finish it. And I think that's a very positive development. I also appreciate and applaud that we no longer need, or will not after the resolution is approved, we will no longer be prohibited from addressing Manny and Jonathan and Joe individually if we think there's an issue with them. We don't have to address the council as a whole. As we observed a number of times last year, that's just an unconstitutional restriction on our right to address you guys, and I'm glad to see that you paid attention to that.
That was created well before this new administration.
Speak in the mic.
Yes, absolutely. We've been commenting on it for years.
Yeah,
there is no practical need to just address Tucker Kelly if I think I have a problem with Joe Jackson. If I have a problem with Joe, I'm going to tell him I have a problem with Joe.
But Joe's a good guy, though.
He absolutely is a good guy, and I'm picking on him because I wouldn't pick on Mr. Jaynack because everybody else does. And a lot of other things. I dropped my yellow card so I don't have all the carryovers from last month. But as I've observed in the past, if you sit here long enough, read the resolutions long enough, and pay attention to certain council people, you'll always come up with something that needs to be addressed. And I think if the outbursts continue from the former council president, that this council should take a vote to censure him and/or put him in a timeout because he's out of order, he's undisciplined, and most of the time he's incorrect. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do you have something to follow up, Mr. Freelance? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Next, Mrs. Gregg.
You didn't want to answer any of his questions? No?
I'm sorry?
You didn't want to answer any of Mr. Waters' questions?
I don't think he asked any questions.
Oh, I had one question I didn't ask. What is the Death Star here?
Oh, that was my question. That was my question. All right, go ahead.
You know what, can we address that? Mrs. Seeger, can you just hop on that one?
That is everybody's request for the meetings to be taped. And right now they're being taped at the same time the voice is, but they're not live stream yet because we have to run a Cat 4 cable to the actual box for it to be live streamed. But right now that's the first step into what everybody's been requesting from us. And as you can see, there's 9 microphones now for everybody too. And those are it took a while for them to come in, but we were doing them, and that's proof that we were doing it.
Thank you. And those are that's a 360 video?
No.
No, he has a joystick over there that can be a 360, yes.
So after this meeting, the next meeting will have a cable?
No, I didn't say by the next meeting. I said we're working on that. But if you request a copy of the through Oprah of the meeting, you will get the video and the voice.
Ms. Gregg. Ms. Gregg, could you just look behind that TV screen real quick? Just look at that real quick.
I don't think it's fair for everybody else.
Well, you're up on the microphone now and ask the question.
Good job. Okay. I hope I didn't use up my 5 minutes with that. That was number 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whew, some things do move ahead and get done. Welcome, Mr. Jackson. We're hoping for good things from you, an independent thinker, not part of the crowd. Some things were brought up. January to July, there was questions brought up. First of all, I agree with everybody that got up with all the questions and points, especially the attorney and Mama Bear. I have 2 things to piggyback off of: the attorney and Mama Bear. Huh? Katie. I'm sorry. Love you, Katie. The attorney, the first week of January, this complicit board, I know you weren't necessarily part of this, but they made him impotent. The very first action they did was he doesn't have to look at the ordinances. How is that good for our town? So one of the things that was said, we have an attorney, but I just want to remind everybody, because we were talking about it, they didn't want to listen to the attorney that is supposed to be working for him, which is us. He works for us. He's our town attorney. It doesn't behoove us to keep wasting our tax dollars to be suing. Use your own money. So going to the money, I looked at the papers that were signed, and I saw you all, not you, Mr. Jackson, you weren't part of it. I don't think Manny was, or Jonathan, but I saw the other of you signed off our tax dollars, and the clerk. And those dollars shouldn't have been paid. It should have came out of your pockets. You had no right using our tax money to pay your attorneys to lose a case that you knew you were going to lose. And I want my money back. And I have a vote of loss of confidence. We gave you time. And now I'm going to go to Mama Bear, who got up. Thank you so much for everything you said way back about being complicit in the back seat of the car. But tonight, after you spoke, and there was some nice back and forth, Mr. Kelly, you were incapable of being polite and civil to a well-respected and loved citizen who speaks up for a lot of the mothers in this town. And you're a father. You had to say, simply, I want you to look at the tape. Listen to how you sound. There is no room for that in our town. You got your dig in. Anybody that's out here is watching you. You're not any better than what we just had a turnover of with Mr. Jednak. Mr. Jednak put a letter out calling the, and it was brought up. I don't have to go over it. Everybody knows how rude it was. I put out a sincere invitation to go have lunch. I wanted to hear your visions. So part of my 5 minutes, I really would like to hear, because I never heard from Manny. I love his voice. I love Jonathan. Joe, I don't know you. I want to like you, but please don't align yourself with schlock. It's been enough. Be an independent thinker. It's enough. Okay? So let's get to know you. I want to hear your voice. Vic, please speak up. You did it. You came through one time. I'd even like to hear from the clerk. Really? I want to hear what the hell their vision is. There's no vision here. We want to sue people, we want to get our things out, our evidence for this lawsuit, and we want to act smart because we're going to blabber off a bunch of numbers over, this case and that ordinance and this and that, because we've got to be smarter than everybody in the room. It's got to stop. How many of you, and if you don't want to answer it now, but when you give your reports to us, which we're supposed to get, what you did since the last meeting, did you get together with anybody? Did you have a real human being conversation instead of attacking each other, taking pictures of each other, writing horrible letters about our town? I wonder if you live here. I want to hear what town you identify of. I got attacked this week because I said I live in Wharton. The person didn't understand that my mailing address is Wharton, my driver's license is Wharton, my paperwork is Wharton. I pay taxes to Rockaway Township. I'm Rockaway Township Green, and I got attacked as an outsider. There are no outsiders. Good governance anywhere is good governance everywhere. So I want to hear what addresses you identify with. It doesn't affect you when you hear stuff. I always tell people I live in Rockaway Township. I don't think any of you without the address could give a crap about us, because you can always fall back on your Booton address or something else. It's not fair. Stop muddying our name. There was an article, we put the worst. You want me to sit down?
We realize exactly what you're saying. It's repeated over and over again. We all have our minds made up who's what and what's what. It's time, let's get on with the business. Look at the time. People have to go to work. It's time we realize what's going on.
We do. Okay, I will.
I'm sorry, Mr.
I'm
Waters.
done.
Mr. Waters.
Thank you.
What did you say, Mr. Waters?
I said no one is keeping her here, Tucker.
Keeping who?
Right. She said she had to go to work. My observation was we weren't keeping her here. She was out of order more than I was out of order.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, just...
That was my only comment.
Okay.
Why did I back down? She intimidated me. Why did I back down? I don't know, because I have a big voice. People think I don't get intimidated. I get intimidated from this garbage you guys pull. I get intimidated from the police. So answer my questions, and thank you. I agree. We all heard it. So let me hear some answers. What's different from 2 weeks ago to now?
As far as what, like, what direction are you going at?
What's your vision? What towns do you live in? Can they talk? Why didn't you say something when someone was out of order? Are you consistent or not?
Can you answer a question for Mrs. Gregg? Where do you live? What's your vision? Yeah, I mean, she's asking a question.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was
Booton, Newfoundland. I mean, there's this. Mr. Sackett, do you have any?
I was attacked because
we're all Rockaway. And my vision is to get the damn fields fixed at Peterson and put some turf fields in. I'm tired of this, my kids, going on all this garbage that we have here. Okay, wasting our money. Be nice to fix the fields. Okay, Mike Datchison tried. They took the money out. I want the fields fixed. I want my kids to have a good place to play. There's sports. I'm tired of it. That's my vision. Fix the fields.
And then, Mr. Sacco, we didn't take the money out, and we're still waiting on a plan to actually have money together. We can agree on that, right? Yeah, it wasn't $100,000. You're wrong. But I mean,
Council President, the CFO is here and she can confirm what happened in the budget if we want to ask her.
I mean, this is Greg. Is that? Oh, Mr. Jackson, please.
Sure. My vision is really to help move the town forward and get business done, like Mayor Puzio said. I'd like to stop talking about lawsuits and going after attorneys and going after people, and start going through the agenda and moving forward and getting business done, getting our budget done, and so we could do things like fix the fields, and we can get the most from our tax dollars, the services back to the residents of this township.
Stacey, do you remember our kids played football together, right? Do you remember way back when they said they came to us, the coaches, we had a vote because there was going to be, I believe, Green Acres money diverted so we can get turf fields? I don't know if you recall that. That was years ago. Our kids are 21, whatever they are right now. So I guess my point is, yeah, I agree with Jonathan that, you know, my kid went through all the systems, played basketball, CYO basketball, he played on all these fields, okay? And the fields aren't good. But if you ask if a council member asks a question, and I'm going to go just on Mayor Puzio, his goals, because I wrote them down I agree with his goals. I agree with the gazebo, fixing fields, paving. Ms. Gregg?
I'm listening.
Okay.
I'm watching.
But one thing he did say, improve efficiency, right? And I agree with Mike, Mayor Mike.
Call me Mike.
I'm sorry.
Fine.
But if we question, or I question Mayor Puzio and say, Mayor, can you like expand or expound on these plans? Give us a little more. And I hope he doesn't take that as an insult or as a council person invading an administrator, or in this case, the top administrator's turf, since we're talking about fields. And I hope that isn't the case. If I question him that, you know, hey, Mr., you know, can you expand so we can spend the money efficiently like you had said we should? And sometimes I think it's interpreted that we're taking over somebody's turf. And I hope with Mr. Yeah.
I actually listened last year. I was up there, and I listened to what the council wanted, and I said to myself, what was the roadblock? And a few weeks ago, I met with our town engineer, our business administrator, Mr. Sack and Mr. Quinn are on the recreation committee. I met with Allison. We had plans that we put forth. I have a plan to present something to the council with costs, with some various ideas, because I learned from exactly what I spoke with Phyllis, and Phyllis had told me on a one-to-one conversation, you know, if you're putting carpet in your house, you want, right? Come on, Phyllis, right? We got that. You want to know what the square footage costs. So I took those comments to heart, and last year maybe I was in the know a little bit more because I was on the planning board. So I had a little bit more. I would call the administration. I had maybe a little bit more collaboration with them. So I learned from that. I do have a plan this year for the basketball courts, right, Jonathan?
Yes.
With facts, with figures, things to present, plans, blueprints. Was it Keller Kilpatrick? Is our who drew the plans up? We sat down for about 2-3 hours a couple weeks ago. So I did take what you're saying tonight to heart, because I want us to be successful in that area, and I know I need all of you to do it. So I'm going to present something.
Thank you. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear more from you, Vic.
Yeah, during the budget.
Although I use sports as an example, because his sons played on those fields. Joe's did, mine did, Patty's did, and I'm sure now the younger children, the younger children are playing on. So we know what the fields look like. Okay, by October it was a month. You got 6 teams playing on that. Joe coached, I coached, other people coached who were involved. So we know, but when he puts forth, and I'm repeating, I think it was just taken as an affront last year. How dare you question how we're spending the money? Just spend it. So nobody's averse to spending the money wisely. But when a question is asked, I think there is a duty for the mayor to spend the money wisely or to give explanations. And I'm hopeful with Mayor Puzo we can get that done in that manner. And I'm not just limiting it to sports at the gazebo or whatever, but that's,
I have no problem groveling and getting those basketballs. Trust me, because they're not for me. Listen, my knees don't work as well, and my kids are older, so we're not going to enjoy them. I just think it's time that we do something.
Understood.
Now Manny's a different story. He might play on those cards.
I am, yeah. Real quick, I mean, I understand your situation with Wharton. You know, you still live in Rockaway. I don't know why anybody's going to attack you for having your mail address being Wharton. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Just real quick, Mr. Gregg, I want to address, I have a Dover address. You have a Wharton address, right? And for I've been here 28 years, I could not understand why Rockaway Township, a town this size, doesn't have its own post office, right? And I believe you brought it up last year. And I believe Mayor Dodgeson tried to get that rectified. Am I not right? Oh, no.
He read the answers from the newspaper, what was printed last year.
Well.
And then Mr. Tucker came up to me, at a Rockaway Township, it wasn't a council meeting, it was a...
You addressed me at the Rockaway Rotary.
The Rotary?
You addressed me, yes.
It was the one that was in the Atlantic Healthcare building. That's a Rotary. So he came up and he said he had
Commerce.
and he told me, you're a loser, you're a loser, you're a loser, you lost, you didn't get it changed.
Come on.
But that's what happened. So all I want to do is turn it back. So let me hear the vision.
Mrs. Gregg, I'm answering your question. And I'm just saying that Mayor Dodgeson tried. Didn't he say he went to the postmaster and tried to... Listen, he was fighting the federal government. I mean, we all would like to have our Rockaway Township address, but we don't. And I remember Mayor Dodgeson saying, I went to the postmaster, and he's fighting the federal... So, I mean... that's my... I'm sorry.
Can we just move on? I didn't want to go into different, I just wanted to hear what your vision was, because Mr. Jednak...
We had a question that was raised by Mrs. Gregg, and we're trying to go through this so we can move on.
Yeah, so move on.
So I'm trying to do that as best I can. That's completely false, what you stated.
We'll look up the record that he went...
That's fine, and there is no record of it, because we're at a Rockaway Commerce coming out of an elevator, and I told you I own property in Wharton, and I wouldn't condone it. That's what I said to you. And then I gave you the information that I would show you, which you refused to take the last council meeting. You wouldn't accept it. Excuse me.
I don't want to have the conversation with you about it. What is your vision? What is your motivation?
You went and tried to get a vote and get a petition signed by all of the residents around there, and you couldn't get the amount of numbers of signatures.
This is over 10 years ago and irrelevant.
So you tried, and the postmaster wouldn't appease you. You were defeated on that, so I understand it. But I own in Wharton. I own property in Rockaway. It's Dover as well, and that's the way it is in Hibernia. It wasn't a concern of mine. My vision is moving forward and having business to move forward and get along and have this stuff happen. We're going to have some bumpy roads, have some disagreements, especially when it comes to the sports complex that we have, Peterson Field, and some of the other fields. We try our best. We've reached out to the POA to try to help out the POA with doing some improvements over there and some volunteerism for that.
Yeah, Mr. Gregg, can I ask you a question? When you're asking me questions, and because we've been criticized, I think I've been criticized for it, when we're having a discussion and if you were asking me questions and I was staring...
Can you just make your point?
No,
yes, I was looking away because the person who attacked me walking towards me in the room.
Because if I was staring at the brick wall while you were speaking to me, you'd take issue with that, wouldn't you? So when we're speaking to you and you're staring at the back brick wall, wherever you're staring, don't you think that's disrespectful?
Just like being on your phone.
I'm not on my phone.
In past meetings.
Really?
Never?
Really?
It wasn't you?
Really?
So can you let him finish?
That's up to you. Can I and the other council members finish? Mrs. Gregg? We can? Is that a yes? I'm trying to do the best I can for you. But as far as the fields, I had some difference of opinions of the money that was going to be spent on the fields, especially the basketball court, where we already had $50,000 allocated for those repaving and resurfacing. We never cut that, and it was far less to have that done. But because of what had happened and insurance got involved and everything else, of an unsafe area that's been going on for years that was being dilapidated. It was nobody's fault. And they closed the courts down and the tennis courts down because of safety concerns. Not because a council member had it out for anybody or whatnot. But moving forward, we're trying to do those improvements and not waste money. We resurfaced an area and cut out some stuff only to rip it all up again to redo it. That to me is a waste of money. It really is. So those are things that we're looking at. Some people understand it. Mr. Puzio, Mayor Puzio has some background being on the planning board, and I hope you can agree that I have some background too with construction, and, all right? We can all agree on that. And everybody else has a little bit of opinion that goes on there, making a move forward. So when we question those things, you automatically assume that we're against the improvements, but we're not. We're trying to do our best that's there.
I just asked for your
So
vision.
with that being said, I see good, if you're not interested, Mrs. Gregg, then I won't answer anymore. Mrs. Abrahamson.
So your vision is all about the basketball, that
No,
one
it's
thing,
not, but you're
and
not-
telling me that I'm not listening. I asked for your vision.
No, I understand. You just weren't interested in what I was saying, so I'm passing it along. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Mrs. Gregg. I can echo every one of the council members sitting at on this dais. I can echo the condition of the fields forever. My oldest child is 40 years old this past month. We have been playing on these fields for over 40 years, 7 children and 6 grandchildren. My vision is when I ask a question to administration, I hope about where the money is going and how $100,000 is being spent is not for the basketball courts. It's for, just like Mr. Palumbo said, Mr. Council President Kelly said, and the rest of us, most of us on this dais, just want a breakdown. I go in to purchase an item, I don't expect the merchant to say to me, give me a blank check, and I'll give you whatever I have here to fill your request. We're the keeper of the money, as we heard at the microphone tonight. We need to get the answers to the questions we ask about the money that the township residents are forking out, okay? So I just want accountability. I just don't want, I think I heard Mr. Mayor Puzio say, we hit a roadblock, and he realizes it, okay? We hit a roadblock. I just want the roadblocks to be moved. I want open communication. I do not want non-answers, okay? And I just hope that we can move the town in the direction for my grandchildren that live here, my children that have homes here, and my other children that are going to build here, okay? This is home for us. That's my only investment. My agenda is to keep Rockaway affordable, and I have family members with a Newfoundland address, a Marcella address, and a Dover address. So I understand when I first moved here, it was concerning to me. Why am I having an 07801 zip code? Then it was explained. We're too big for the amount of postal service that needs to go. We have to have it divided. I accepted that answer. I understand what you're saying. It bothers you. But I think Mayor Datchison did exhaust most of that. I just want to move forward. I want the town to move forward. I want us to be cohesive and save the taxpayers' money as much as we can. That's my vision, to be able to afford to live here. My husband just retired. I want to stay in Rockaway. I want to see my grandchildren grow up. That's my vision.
And if I can just follow on that real quick. Mrs. Siegert and Mrs. Ferrante, we had Keller Kirkpatrick that submitted a quote and a bid back in September of 2016. And the bid was for $4,000, and it was going to give us some plot areas and whatnot, and it was going to give us 2 conceptual plans. Correct?
I don't know.
Mrs. Ferrante?
I don't know. Yeah, I wasn't the engineer at that time,
But it was
so I can't recall what.
September of 2016, we addressed it, and you got some other stuff that was informed by them, that it was redlined, and it was going back and forth.
Correct,
But they
yeah.
were, right?
Correct.
All right, that's part of that.
But, yeah, I can't details of the proposal at that time.
But the proposal was to provide us with the amount of money under the concept, not just the lot line and the plot that they were putting out there, because that part of it was free. They were including that portion of it for nothing. And then the rest of it was an expense that they were billing us over a course of time. Have we received the conceptual plans that they had indicated in that? so we can distribute them to the rest of the council?
Yes, we received them, and we,
But we still currently haven't received them, right?
right, because as you guys requested, we're preparing a plan for the Peterson Field complex.
The whole entire complex now?
Correct.
Do that at the budget.
Okay, so again, I just want the public to understand though, like years we're talking about, this has been something going on, to get a plan together, to find out what it's going to cost, to project those costs in order to put money aside in the budget, perhaps approve it and then move forward with it, right?
We have all the costs, the breakdown, and certain things that we can put in as far as lights. It's a very, very comprehensive.
Sure, but we have that, we're working on that now. We haven't had that.
No.
Okay,
Not
that's all.
that I know of.
Okay.
Not that I know of, but
We've
that's
never had
something that I wanted to get going. That's why in December.
Right.
So I'm going to get it to you guys. Door by door.
And what sports programs are involved in that process of assembling that plan? Which sports programs have been involved in the process of assembling that comprehensive plan? Sports
Football,
programs.
baseball.
Is it football,
Which
baseball,
sports programs?
No,
What do you mean? It's going to benefit everyone?
No, the question is which sports programs have had input into developing that comprehensive plan that we will hopefully sometime soon be able to receive?
We've been asking that for a year.
We're going to present everything.
No, it's
What
not.
happened is I had a meeting with Jonathan Sackett, with our town administration, with Jack Quinn, and Bob Conlon of the Citizen Rec Committee, which encompasses all sports. So I had him come as the president just to take a look so he can get a little buy-in.
Right.
And it will filter down. I'm sure when we present the plan, I'm going to invite, whoever wants to come. It'll be, a public
Sure,
session.
we can have it on there for the agenda.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We
that'd
can
be great.
have basketball, baseball. We can have
And
everything.
comment section for people to comment and.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Can we, Jenny, can we just answer?
Filter its way out.
Yeah?
Are you done?
Yeah. Did you want me to go?
No, just, she was asking about your vision for
I hear
Rockaway.
Patty.
Yeah.
It was a simple question. It wasn't really all that.
No, we're going to answer it all so it doesn't come up again. Trying to get all the information out for you.
Well, so far, we just heard about sports. I just asked what your vision was for the town.
No, that is not true. That is not true.
What else did anyone mention, though?
I was very serious. I said about the gazebo that the mayor wants, and I said because I'm mentioning sports doesn't mean there's other things that we need to get
It kind of
done
went off
here.
the direction here.
No,
with
I'm not getting. If you're going to say
details.
something inaccurate, and I'm going to address it, because I specifically said, also the gazebo, the mayor wants to redo, and I wrote down part of his things that he wanted, and I said, although we're talking about sports, it's not limited to sports. And the
What did the
gazebo
other
was an
people
example.
Speak about, Vic, because now you seem
okay.
to be feisty here.
Well, be accurate. That's all I'm asking.
Well, I'm asking you. I wanted to hear your voice because I haven't
Okay.
been hearing it. So
Okay.
now you had three
Well, now you
things
hear
to
my
say.
voice. And now you hear my
But
voice.
I asked specifically.
Okay,
I have
now
not
you-
heard from certain
Right.
people. They have not been
and
allowed
you know what?
to speak.
If you're respectful to me, I'm
I'm being respectful.
back,
I would
okay?
like to hear your voice. I was
Right.
making a
If you're
space for
respectful
it.
to
Vic.
me, I will be respectful back.
All right, Mrs. Gregg.
So I wasn't asking about the sports. I was asking about people.
No,
and then it was Jeremy's turn.
Gregg, Mrs. Gregg.
No, please, if you have more to say, please continue.
It's taken.
You want to address
It was a
Mrs. Gregg
2-minute.
about that?
I'm just saying, while I appreciate you giving more than 5 minutes so that people don't get cut off.
And I did say,
I get that, but we're at 9:27. She had 27.
and I understand that, but you know what? And I can't agree with you more. I understand that, but if I cut her down, the next thing you know, it's something different.
Excuse me, I continue this conversation in private.
She looks up to you. You can address that with her for next time.
It's not just her. It's 9:30.
I can't agree with you more. Mrs. Gregg wanted to be heard. She wanted to come back. She wanted to interrupt beforehand. I'm doing the best I can to appease what Mrs. Gregg wants. So you're good if you do it. You're good if you don't do it. I mean, it's difficult. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was Mr. Dio. I'm sorry, Mrs. Degman. Come on up here. Say the best for last. How's that?
You know I want to speak.
I'm sorry. I even wrote down times that you spoke. I'm sorry.
Pat Degnan, 88 Valley View Drive.
First of all, I'd like to thank Mayor Puzio for keeping us appraised of the water situation all weekend. And thank you to Bobby Shear and the Water Department for getting the problem solved so quickly. In answer to Mr. Dio's question about why our taxes are being raised so high, 63 cents at least of every dollar of our taxes goes to school. We have not had municipal increases over the last couple of years because there's been a budget cap. So we need to kind of rein in the school taxes to keep our taxes down. Also, at the last meeting, the budget was due by January 15th, but Mrs. Seeger did inform us that at that point we didn't have the state figures. So the state was allowing extra time for the budget to get done with those figures in. If we don't have the figures from the state, what sense does it make for us to put out a budget? Because we don't know what money we're getting back.
We would change the code then to reflect that, is what we should do, right?
Yes, I would suggest that. Let's see. Okay, this is a new year, and I hope that our township will have a much better year than 2018 proved to be. Many residents have been in attendance at these council meetings, and many of us have spoken our allotted 5 minutes during the open public to the portion of the meetings. And yet, when we read the approved minutes of our comments, they are summarized in 4 sentences each, and not really our thoughts as we express them, but what they were perceived to be by whomever is writing the minutes. I, for one, feel that 5 minutes of discussion cannot be summarized in 4 lines. I would rather see what I said in the minutes. And as far as the 5 minutes, I think 5 minutes is enough of a time for us to get our point across in most instances, as long as we're allowed to finish our thoughts.
Mrs. Daigle, for minutes, they're just to be comprehensible, they're not verbatim. So we do the best that we can on what we get that comes in, on everything that happens, discussion reports, you know, they're not verbatim.
It is recorded.
It is, and you know what? Everybody has the opportunity to get that record for, you know, for $1.98 or 78, $1.78.
But if someone is reading the minutes, which are published, which we can get, which I have done all year long, they are not really going to know the conditions that existed last year.
Thank you, Ms. Dick.
Council President.
Hold on a second. Do you want to answer a question she's got?
Yeah, with regard to the budget, yes, the school board is the largest percent of your tax dollar at the municipal level with regard to property taxes. However, the municipal purpose portion has been as high as 28%. It's higher than other towns in Morris County. If you look at it over that same 20-year period, you will see a significant increase in the municipal portion of the tax dollar. You have to go back and look at the numbers, but you will see that.
That's it. Thank you. Before I close the open to the public, anybody who wishes to be heard? Go ahead, Mrs. Coleman. Oh, I'm sorry. Kramer, I'm sorry. She looks like Emily a little bit, doesn't she? Yeah.
Sorry, I look like who?
Emily Coleman, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm Kathy Kramer. I live at 22 Iroquois in White Meadow.
I'm sorry, thank you.
First, the water situation, thank you. Got it solved very, very quick. I know it didn't happen sitting at a desk at a computer, so whoever was outside in that, rock on. They were awesome. The guys who did the plowing the other night, I got called in at 4 o'clock in the morning. Roads were already great. Good job. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, nobody in this room misses an opportunity to be insulting, to smear, and to be derogatory. Knock it off. Or just stop it. Just stop it. If you are going to say something and it is disrespectful in its tone to anyone, stop. Put the people of this town first. All of the people, not just the kids playing on the fields. Not just, I'm a single parent that have been busting my ass for years to make it work. And my sad story is that when my daughter graduates high school, she's a junior now, my plan was to leave because I can't afford to be here. So when I saw a Facebook post saying we cut money out of this budget for the first time in however long, I got pretty damn excited. Really? A little spark of hope. I was absolutely thrilled. Yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. And then John and Glacino came to this room. I'm sorry, but that's not going to save anybody money, ever, for any reason. That is not an option. Don't do that again, because I really don't like that guy. Just a bad, bad deal. I don't know what the story was. I don't know what the end game was. Bad idea. You guys got to knock this crap off. You guys got to start working together, and you guys got to start bringing this town forward. My vision is, and you spoke to this, affordability. This is not an affordable place to live anymore. Almost every meeting, you have some of our seniors here who are on fixed incomes, and they come here and they beg you to help them. They beg you. I'm begging you. I can't afford to live here. This is absurd. And my services are not anything close to what my mom has in Andover. She has 5 times the property, she has 5 times the services, and her taxes are less than mine. I have a 1/5 of an acre. A 1/5 of an acre. It's absurd. Could you please work together? And if there's somebody here that suggests a cost-saving way to go about stuff, forget about who is suggesting it. I don't care if you don't like the person that comes up with the suggestion about how to save money. Investigate it. You came up with the suggestion of the assistant business administrator, of looking at that position as, is it actually needed? My answer immediately was, I have no idea. You said, well, then we need a full-time mayor. Is that how other towns are making that work? Because that doesn't seem to save costs. But how are other towns doing it? Are they comparable to us? Do they have all the population that we have? Do they have all the businesses that we have? Do they have all the needs that we have? How are they making it work? Or aren't they? I don't care if you like the person that, or don't like the person that the suggestion comes from. Investigate it, look into it, poke it with a stick, whatever. Just make this place a little more affordable. My kids are beyond sports fields, but I like kids well enough. They're nice. They're a little sticky, but they're nice. You know, we all need something here. I need to be able to afford it. Get to work.
Yeah.
We have, just to touch on, I don't mean to interrupt and end it.
No, I was done.
Yeah, we have a financial review board that consists of a bunch of professionals that are appointed onto a position that are there. And they do meet along with our CFO as well as our councilman, Jeniak, that's here. It is pretty new. We've had it in the past. I believe Mr. Romaine was on it at one time, right? Years ago. And it's an avenue of what these professionals that have some financial background look into those things, to come up with other money savings and some comparisons. And they're just recently doing that right now. And it's difficult to get some information. So, you know, touching on what you had requested and asked, and Mr. Mayor, if we could, they were asking for some information and trying to go through Oprah. And they're actually a commission and a committee that we appoint, we put them in place to make them suggestions, and Mrs. Palmieri does her best to try to answer things and try to get information for them. Could we kind of streamline that rather than kind of roadblock them? Like they were doing comparisons with police departments and IRs and arrests and cost factors of things. And
I just heard from Ms. Seeger, they received everything that they requested.
They received all the IRs and all the arrest records and stuff like that? Okay, because they've been asking for it for months now, since November.
They have to give us time, but they never put in, they put an Oprah request in, but they never put a directive to the administration.
Yeah, you know what, I mean, the intent of what it was, because they gave you a comparison from what Roxbury did. Roxbury gave you all the arrests, all the IRs. I mean, it's real simple information. I mean, I can call down to dispatch and get the IR number. But moving forward, if we could just give them money, I mean,
I gave it to the departments, they were working on it when I got it back and reviewed it.
Okay.
They were given their...
But they're trying to provide information to minimize costs and throw ideas out.
I appreciate all efforts.
Yeah, and they're volunteers.
Fantastic. Really, I appreciate all efforts to lower my taxes.
Yeah, if I could.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things that have importance and other things that they address immediately, and
I understand
our water
it's a
issue we're going to
process.
deal with first before we deal with something else. That's less of importance on there. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I think everybody on this dais and the administration and the public can disagree.
Yeah, and if I could, I just want to add to that, to your
I think you just
point.
got it real quick. She's the last one.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer? To your point, your thoughts are with the majority of the people in this town. If you randomly pick a door and knock on it, that's what you just said to us is what you will hear.
Yes.
If you look at all 39 towns in Morris County, you look at the budgets, Rockaway Township has the second highest budget. Only one other town in this county spends more than Rockaway does. And to your point, other towns have services we don't. You don't have to go far to find towns that include garbage collection, right? We don't have that here. So we did reconstitute the Financial Review Board. It hadn't been populated for over a decade. Last year, we appointed it, and they are starting to work, but they're starting from scratch, essentially. There were some responses from the administration this afternoon. There is a follow-up from the Financial Review Board seeking additional information.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, so it wasn't too far after the responses came in. But that is our number one challenge, affordability. All the arguments that happen here, they're going to end within the next 5 to 10 years because none of us are going to be able to live here anymore because it's going to be too expensive.
Yes.
And what you said about having a 2, 3, 4-year plan, that's everybody. That's everybody in this town. The focus has to be on affordability. It's our number one job. Everything else has to get pushed aside to meet that goal. So thank you for saying
I agree. That does mean knock it off with the lawyer fees. Just to throw that out.
So, Mrs. Kramer, to that point specifically, this council here has not sued anybody. We have been on the receiving end of lawsuits. Not only have we been on the receiving end of lawsuits, whether you agree with them or not, we have been individually named in those lawsuits for the sole purpose of driving up legal fees because of the representation required.
Purpose to drive up legal fees.
Sure. There's plenty of cases, every time that's happened, that the judge has thrown out the individual claims because it's ridiculous. You don't have to go very far to look through the record of courts to see that practice is strictly it's unnecessary and it's intended to be intimidating. And it's intended to drive up costs, right? So regardless of whether you agree with the reason or not, right? You don't have to go far to find court records to show. And the judges say it all the time. There's no reason. There's no reason to include individuals. Mrs. Smith is quoting it much better than I can. So, but I think Mr. Palumbo.
Please, thank you.
When we were sued individually, first time my attorney said, "What do you mean you're being sued individually? You're a counsel." And he has extensive background in municipal government law. And he said, "What do you mean you're being sued? I'm being sued individually. You don't sue a council individually." He says, "Who's advising you guys to be sued individually?" I said, "I don't know, but I need to be defended." So, and to Councilman Jedniak's point, that's one of the things the judge threw out. And then it happened again. And Eddie said to me, "Are you kidding? You're getting sued individually again? And your town's gonna be on the hook for my bill because you're getting sued individually again." He said the first judge threw that out. And he was just astounded that twice I had to seek his services, which he says, "I'll guarantee one thing, I don't care about your cases, but I'll guarantee one thing, those will be thrown out. That piece of it will be thrown out." And they were. And I don't understand why we were sued individually. And people will talk, and first time, and then we're sued again the second time. Thank you.
I will leave that for better legal minds than myself to argue, but too much on legal fees.
Yeah.
Too much on legal.
We agree.
Okay. With that being said, we're going to close this portion to the public. Does anybody want to take just a 5-minute recess real quick?
Yeah.
Was that all right? We take a 5-minute recess?
Just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I have to go to the bathroom myself. Can we have a 5-minute recess? We can? Are you guys okay?
At the time. Yeah. Just do it.
9:43, we're going to go into a 5-minute recess real quick. Thank you.
Nice to give you a break.
What's going on with that? Introduce it. I think the one question of fixing salaries, those are the biggest issues that are going on right now.
Not that.
See?
No, late notice.
See? I have my pile here. No. Yeah, I am. Hey, Manny, are you guys ready? Ready to rock and roll? Everybody there? Okay, we're gonna go back on the record. It is 9:55. I know. We have here number 10. It would be ordinances to introduce. We have ordinances A through E, and I know there's some members of the public that had made some comments earlier in the day about some of these ordinances online and social media. So if we could, Mrs. Seeger and Mayor Puzio, could we give a little bit of an introduction of what they are and what's the purpose for them? Sure. All right. You wanted to start off from A and work your way down?
Well, Council President, if I may.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Because there are ordinances for introduction, typically we do them one at a time rather than a consent agenda.
Well,
they have to be moved separately. That's been our previous practice.
But I was going to have them actually discuss all of them, and then we can act on each one individually, or do you want to have it?
As long as we're making separate motions on each of them.
We will do the separate motions. Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Council President, if I may?
You can, Mr. Achafano.
Thank you, sir. With respect to ordinances, I have absolutely no problem if you want an overall summary. That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Okay? But unlike resolutions, when you come to the individual ordinances, you must read the full title of each ordinance, and then you can discuss it again at that time or whatever, but you have to break it down what the individual title is for ordinances.
And Mr. Achafano, what I was intending to do was have the administration somewhat make some of an understanding what A and E is, and after they do that, then I would identify each one for a vote.
Absolutely fine.
Right, that's
you
what I'd
can
like to do.
You can do them individually or as a group, and then come back and pick them up one by one. That's absolutely fine.
I would do it as all of them here, but working from A to E down, and then after we get that information of what they are and what their intent is, then we'll go back and we'll introduce each one, identify each one, and vote on each one.
Nothing wrong with that procedure.
Okay.
Ordinance number 1902, amending the personnel chapter of 1026. It is talking about the resolution when we voted in December to update the recommendation from JIF to update our policy handbook. It came up that we didn't know we knew we had an employee handbook, but it really wasn't used because we had the policy and procedures manual, and JIF said we can have one instead of two. And since everything in the employee handbook was already in the policy and procedures book, we passed that. We updated both of those books, but I told you in January I would come back and tell you that we were going to do away with the employee handbook the right way, and that took an ordinance. But in December, we had to pass that for JIF to be in compliance to get our discount for this year.
Right.
Does everybody recall that?
And you know, I do, but can you just, for the public, what would be the discount of amount of money?
Oh, I don't remember.
But it
was significant.
It was like hundreds of thousands of dollars,
yes,
correct?
And it depended on every lawsuit. It was dependent on every lawsuit.
And in order to get that discount, we'd have to comply with the revisions they wanted in the policy procedure. And one component of that discussion that we had was deleting the employee handbook, and that's what that is right there.
Correct.
Okay.
And JIF had extended our time frame to do that because we were a little bit behind.
Yes.
On that, they extended the time frame, and we worked together to get that done and voted on, so we would receive that discount.
Okay.
So all this is doing is just having the policies and procedures manual and not the handbook.
Goodbye, right? Okay.
Yes,
Can we work on B?
handbook.
On 19-03?
19-03 is the ordinance fixing the salaries for officials on the contractual employees of the Rockaway Township in Morris County 6?
Council 6.
Council 6. And that is, well, actually, you should probably pass the resolution for...
Yeah. We're going
For
on
their,
27? Or 26 or 27?
7 and 8.
27 and 8?
Yeah, but remember, this is just introduction, so you can introduce it.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
you're not really passing it to the next meeting. So you can do this as an introduction and then pass the resolution to accept their contract that we all talked about in December.
Correct.
And that's what this has to do with. This is all contractual salaries that everybody agreed on at the negotiations and executive session.
They're bargaining agreements that, the contracts that the administration and the union settled on as far as raises, working conditions, things of that
Are you
nature.
taking questions
From?
Council?
And then,
Yeah, I'll allow you to do that.
On this, while we're on it.
Are you done describing,
number 3.
on 03, yeah, you're done with that one?
And 1904,
Before you go to 04, I believe Councilmember Jenny, just had a quick question.
I think when you introduce, the questions come at the next time when you second reading.
You should reserve questions, Council President, until the individual ordinances.
But if you have any in between, I will, if you email me, I will certainly try to answer them.
Okay.
We've
How's
allowed
that?
questions at both, Council President.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
We've allowed
So
questions at both.
1904 is fixing the salaries for officials and exempt employees that are not covered under the county contract. I mean, under any contract. On collective bargaining, I should say. And then, exempt employees. Then Ordinance 05 has to do with the police contracts that we passed a resolution in December.
Correct.
So this is putting their contract again in the following resolutions, but this is their contractual salaries that we've already agreed on.
And just as a reminder too, we talked about the withdrawal of the per complaint.
Yes, as soon as you pass everything tonight, that will go through, yes.
So this is like the carrot in front of the horse kind of a thing?
Once you pass the resolution, absolutely.
Okay, but we are moving forward with that, so it's on
Yes,
record.
and that's already been told to all of them in writing by our labor attorney.
Okay. And going down from 05, 03, 04, I know that in the past that we have asked some questions. I don't see why it would be an issue if there was a question or two to ask before we vote on each individual ordinance introduced.
It's from what I'd suggest in terms of proper procedure, Council President, is you call the ordinance for introduction, motion to introduce the ordinance formally, second the motion, and then in the context of discussion, you can pose whatever questions you want.
Okay. And with that, though, if we had questions prior to making a motion and second it, Counselor, could we then table it before we made a motion to and second this ordinance or 8 ordinance? So in other words, if we got information now we weren't comfortable with and we tabled it to get more information to have it back onto a council meeting at a later date, it is going to introduce, but you only have one more bite of the apple afterwards. So we're trying to minimize the amount of time that we're minimized. So if we had a question on, let's just hypothetically, 19-02, and before we made a motion and seconded it, if we got some information now, because maybe there would be a motion to table and then second that, and then have it put on another agenda to follow.
It depends on under which one it is, because if you're passing the contracts tonight, which we're supposed to do, it would be hard to hold off those ordinances because they go with the contracts.
But we're
If you
still
pass-
passing the resolutions tonight.
If you pass the contract, I have no way of paying them, and then you'll be in violation of the contracts.
So this discussion is kind of where my question was going to go.
And if you have a question, you can change the ordinance tonight if you wanted to change something.
Good.
Even if the ordinances are introduced tonight, even if you're not comfortable adopting them at the next meeting, if you think further revisions need to be made or there needs to be further discussion, it can be tabled for adoption as well.
Correct.
You don't have to table it for
Correct.
introduction specifically. It can be tabled later on.
If you table it tonight, there's some question about whether you'd have to reintroduce it again. And the comment that the acting clerk makes is accurate. You can table it for passage too if you need further information or for whatever reason at that time.
But moving forward, because we have the other resolutions, 27 and 28, moving on these ordinances here, one goes with the other. So if we didn't do one, then we would have a hard time invoking the other one to make a motion.
For two of those ordinances.
Right.
Because two of the ordinances, they're contractual.
Three.
And you've already
Right, three.
agreed to them, so two of them you wouldn't be postponing.
Right.
I don't think.
And we potentially further delay the other thing of the withdrawal that we're talking about. If we do the one thing with the police tonight in the resolution, when would that withdrawal then happen to minimize any attorney's involvement so we can get this matter?
That withdrawal would not happen until you pass the contract and the ordinances get approved.
So it would have to be adopted. The resolution would have to be passed. The introduction of the ordinance would have to pass, and then further down it would be the adoption of that ordinance.
Well,
And
as
you guys
long,
can-
yeah, but as long as there wasn't any major concern about the ordinance going with the resolution, I wouldn't hold off.
Right, and is there anything to preclude you from doing it tomorrow, whether we vote on any of these now, the withdrawal?
Yeah, because we made it a carrot to this in our negotiations.
That's a component in that?
Yes.
Okay.
Component of the contract, not the ordinance.
Okay, ordinance 1906 or 6 is an ordinance for the supervisors, superior officers of the police department that go along with their contract. And you've already agreed to the contract, so this is what the prices will be.
This is secret 04?
04.
I didn't see 04, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay.
04, I did say it.
You are correct, I'm sorry, I'm just writing
That's
down my
okay.
notes that are here.
I think that does 1902 to 1906, sir.
Okay.
1904 is just any employee covered under any of these other contracts.
And with these salaries that are here, these are outside of the contracts.
Which one?
04.
04 is outside of the contract.
And those individuals, is it retroactive to the 2018?
Yes.
Now, if the actual minimum amount is higher than the current minimum amount that they receive, in other words, if I make a hypothetical, the minimum amount in this ordinance is $45,000 for a position, and that employee currently is getting paid $42,000, do they get a $3,000 retro from the year prior?
No, it would be based on their salary, the raises are.
But if their salary is increased to a higher number in this ordinance that is retroactive.
So you're trying to tell me that one of the minimums is higher than what
No,
someone's current?
I'm asking you a question.
I don't think any of the minimums are higher than what someone's currently getting paid right now.
Okay,
And I can verify that with the CFO?
That is accurate.
okay. That's just the question I had.
Yes.
Does anybody else, real quick, have any quick questions? Mr. Freelander, you have anything? Just, okay.
Yeah, they were missing out of mine too.
Okay.
But that's okay.
They're not missing, right?
I had it.
Yeah. No, he has them, we just can't find them. They're not
Okay.
missing at all. They've been circulated, everybody.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to,
Yeah, I still have questions.
Go ahead, real quick.
Just so that we understand the purpose of salary ordinances, because we have contracts that are being adopted that are on the agenda tonight that will perhaps be adopted by the council. Those contracts include contractual raises over the life of the contracts. Is that correct?
Correct.
And each year, there's a separate contractual amount for each employee, right? By title.
By title, in the contracts? Not all of them, not Morris County 6, no.
But some of these are out of the contract, though.
Oh, the ones out of the contract don't have a contract, they have a
Right.
salary. But Morris County 6 does not have a minimum, an actual salary in there. The police department does because of the titles and steps.
And there are no titles in the Council 6?
No, not in the contract.
And so they are strictly, those salaries are strictly governed by the salary ordinance?
Or the contract?
The percentage increase according to what they make now and the contract settlement for that amount
But
of increase, yes.
The contract doesn't have any, just so I understand, the contract doesn't have any, I don't have a copy in front of me. The contract doesn't have titles specified, is what you just said.
Yes, the contract should be right in your packet.
I don't have it right in front of me for whatever reason.
It should be right there, it's in the packet.
No, I don't have it in front of me for whatever reason, but, and maybe I'm getting it confused with the other contract, because the other one definitely did have.
Those are, the police department definitely
Yes.
have it.
But the point is, there's no titles in that contract. So the titles that are covered by that contract, right, where is that specified? Council 6.
You're asking about which positions fall in Morris County 6?
Right.
That's up to Morris County 6, and that's in their definitions.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
the determination of how, thank you, of how they get, of how salaries are associated with those titles then is only our salary ordinance. That,
Say that, repeat that again, I don't, clarify that, please? What are you trying to get at?
there are no titles in the contract for Council 6,
Yes, that's, yeah.
right? There, however,
Well, the superintendent's contract only applies to superintendents. The blue collar only applies to the blue collar workers. The white collar is the white collar.
and the titles of the employees that fall into those various categories, where does that get determined?
That's in this ordinance.
That was my last question. So the salary ordinance, right, specifies in it the various titles that fall into those bargaining units and the
Correct.
dollar amount, min and max for those salaries.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So one of the reasons we have to have a salary ordinance is if the salaries contractually are going to increase what the current maximums are in the current ordinance, council has to pass a new ordinance raising those maximums in order for the administration to be able to pay those employees in line with the contract.
Correct.
And that's why we have salary ordinances on the same agenda where we have the contracts for the sworn and the civilian staff. Right?
Correct?
Okay. Now, I guess it can wait till the resolutions, but the other,
If you can just get to the
there's
point of what it is.
the question. There's also the question of what's in those contracts, but that's a conversation for the resolution.
We were part of that contract process.
Sure, but for the benefit of the public.
We may not have to adjust this salary ordinance because we do have the contracts, and this goes out, if the contract's 3 years, some of them,
Yes.
3
and
years,
4, 3 and
this
4.
this will go out to
That
the
will
end.
cover the end of the
to the end of the contract. So if someone's making 40,000 now, and at the end of the contract, they're going to be making 50, you might see a minimum salary of 30.
Right.
And a max of, that'll match that end of that contract of 50.
And that is what I saw for those contracts where I could line it up and take a look
Correct.
at it, right? The previous salary ordinances we've had a minimum of 0. These all have non-zero minimums.
I think these had a minimum last time. I think the only ones that didn't have a minimum were the non-contractual.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure that's how it was.
And do you want to talk about the changes in the contracts, what the current contracts stipulate? So the public doesn't have any idea what's in the new contracts that we're going to vote on. So we're voting on ordinances that are required to implement contracts. The contracts will be voted on as a resolution later.
Well,
the question is, when do you want to talk about what the content of those contracts is?
And if I can answer that real quick, is that, if there's a way, what Councilmember Jeniak's doing, and we can move on from this, is he's trying to make the public aware of what the contract contains, what's in there as far as salaries go, and identifying them to the ordinances that we have here for the different officials and contractual employees and exempt employees, so they can actually get a visual of the numbers itself. Yeah, so would it be possible, since we are introducing the ordinances here, which would then allow us to move forward on the resolutions for the contracts of Council 6 and our police department, can we put, if we approve the resolutions for the contracts, can we put them online?
They all are online. The current ones are online. These, as soon as
So
you approve them in the mayor and the
So they will be
we
on, they're
will put
online
them-
now so that people can make that identity
Correct.
of this ordinance that we're introducing and coinciding it with the actual contracts that we have.
Yeah, we even put the ordinances online. The salary ordinance is currently there. When these get approved, it will be replaced with the new one.
Yeah.
And the new contracts, when everybody signs off on them, they will go online. It won't be that by the next meeting. It depends on when the unions sign them and accept them.
Okay.
So it will take time, but they will be there, and they're
Okay.
there now. The old ones.
Does that kind of...
With regard to the contractual
The old
ones.
ones are there.
Okay.
And the state requires them all to be online.
And how will we handle any kind of comparison with the exempt employees that are getting increases?
They're
So they're all-
they usually get what Morris County 6 gets, and that's been what we've always done here, so we're just doing the same thing as we normally follow the procedure.
Is that satisfying?
Yeah, so you answered the question about the salary ordinances for the contractual staff. So then the next question with regard to ordinance, so before I get to that, an ordinance, once introduced, if we make a change to it following introduction, does it have to be reintroduced?
Depends on if it's a significant change or not.
Okay, so changing...
Example?
I guess I would have to have an example. If you're just changing the maximum title, I would have to defer to our attorney.
Mr. Yachapano, do you have an easy explanation?
The law is vague, Council President. It talks about a substantive change in any ordinance. A substantive change is generally defined as a change that significantly affects any aspect of the ordinance. It's extremely vague. A insignificant change would be, fixing a couple of words in an ordinance that don't affect the substance or meaning or application of the ordinance. It depends upon what is done.
Then how would that affect if we voted on these to introduce, and then we were to make changes, and then after those changes, but we've already voted on the resolutions for the Council 6 as well as the Police Department? Would that then have any negative effect of that because of the change that we would make?
No, you can't change the, if I'm understanding you, Council President, you can't change that. You can introduce the ordinance tonight. Okay?
Right.
Vote on the introduction, assuming you vote to introduce the ordinance formally, okay? Then you can address issues with the ordinance between its introduction and when it would come up for passage. And that would be the time when you make an assessment as to whether or not the changes were substantive or not.
But no effect to the resolutions that are following that we have to vote on tonight as well for the contracts that...
I do. I have a say. If you're changing this ordinance, anyone to do with the contracts, you can't change them because they are affected on the contract. If you pass the contract tonight, that's the salary ordinance that you need to pass because that is according to the contract.
They're interlinked.
You're obligated to do that.
Right. That's important.
The only one that's not is the non-contract,
Yeah.
which if you wanted to change something tonight and read it in the change after your discussion, you can do that, and that's the first reading. If you want to put the maximum at $1 million for everyone, we'd be happy.
Yeah, you know what, we'd have to review it, and now that we've got some additional information that we didn't have before, we can address that between the introduction and the adoption of the exempt employee.
You even
Forward.
can do that tonight if you get your answers and you want to change somebody's maximum. You're welcome to change
But
that
we still have
tonight
time
at the
in
introduction.
between the introduction and the adoption in order to do that moving forward.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Council President, the issue with the exempt one, if you're going to make changes, to salary ordinance, you're making changes to salaries. I would be hard pressed to argue that's not a substantive change to change a title's salary, which will require a reintroduction.
And we can look at that between the introduction now.
I'd agree with that.
Right? We can address that. Mr. Yep wanted to address that before. Mrs. Smith, you had a question?
No, I was just going to say you can change the salaries on the salary ordinance anytime throughout the year with just another ordinance, that particular title.
Correct.
Yep.
But
No, you're right.
But an ordinance requires an introduction, adoption, and the
Correct.
mayor's approval.
Right. Yeah, we're just trying to minimize the process. We have to go through that again.
Right.
We can address that after the introduction.
Well.
And just remember, when you're doing the non-contractual, it doesn't mean they're going to get that pay. It depends on the budget.
So that's exactly the point that I'm getting at. If it depends on the budget, why wouldn't we hold off on that ordinance until we have a budget at least introduced and reviewed?
Because it's retroactive to 2018, and the 18 money is there.
That's the problem. They're going to.
You would only be affecting 19.
So the net result is that the administration wants to retroactively pay exempt employees retroactively to 2018 out of funds that are available currently.
Correct, because they deserve the raise just like the contractual
That's insanity.
people. And
we just
there
had
are
we had a conversation about affordability.
And there
That's
are
exactly not affordable.
Okay, but I will tell you, there are statutes
That
that require you, if you give anybody else a raise, there are 4 statutory positions that are going to get the raise no matter what.
Well, and that is why property taxes go up.
Yes, that's the only reason.
We can still address this after the introduction.
Cannot introduce this.
What's that?
Cannot introduce this. That's what it is. But you can still, and then reintroduce it. You're starting the whole thing over.
But you're going to get more information if something's out there rather than doing it.
You need to, this needs to, this is hard now. You don't have a
And
budget.
remember, those salaries cannot be paid
Did
to
you?
20 days after the second reading.
Information on it?
This is not contractual.
We're not talking about the contracts, though.
04.
Exempts. We're talking about the exempts, not the contracts.
Item C, which is 04. And look, you heard the administrator say herself, this is tied to the budget. And we don't even have a budget, let alone have we reviewed a budget, let alone have we introduced it.
Right.
What the appropriate thing to do is this ordinance should be introduced at the time that we introduce the budget, because then the numbers are known.
You already have an 18 budget, so that's where the money would come for 18. They would get their 18 raises. 19, that you will, and they will not get a 19 raise unless the money's in the budget for 19.
The council didn't approve those raises in the 18 budget. That's the whole point.
They did, for what, 4 people? But everybody else did. You did approve everybody else. So you're holding up that ordinance for 4 people?
Wasn't it just an average of 175?
No, 2% was in the budget.
Doesn't make any sense. So you're telling me the administration budgeted raises for 2018 for exempt employees, which the council allowed in the budget, but the administration never introduced a salary ordinance last year to implement those raises?
We didn't there wasn't, because we were waiting we went by the 2017. We never did one. We were waiting for the contracts because everybody always went according to all the contracts.
This doesn't make
Pattern bargaining, what happens is.
There's no bargaining.
You settle with one union, you try to give the equitable across, they used to do it at the county.
Yeah, you know what, though, and I get it, but I think the point that they're trying to make is that these unions fought for themselves to, those who are non-union benefit from the hard work and efforts and strategies to get those raises and increases on that.
These are not union employees. These are exempt non-union employees.
Well,
and look, an ordinance for 18, right? An ordinance limited to 18 to pay 18 raises that the council budgeted is one thing. This is a 19 ordinance retroactive to 18. That the 19 part should absolutely be held until we have a budget that we've
But they're
actually
not
introduced.
going to get that, so they are held until the budget is approved. I only can pay what's in 18 budget that's already been approved. I cannot pay them 19 till after the budget is approved and that you approve the money for their raises. This does not mean that they are getting that money.
So this ordinance could be amended to be restricted to only 2018 and to only those salaries that were approved in the budget for 18. And then we could address 19 with the 19 budget.
It doesn't.
But that's the whole point.
Yeah, I understand.
That's exactly the point.
So with all of that discussion, I'm going to read in from A down to E. Those will vote accordingly. And then, well, that's fine, Mr. Jenny. And then again, so everybody knows that if there's an issue that you find afterwards and you need more information, and there's a concern, we can always make any adjustment, as they said, to the introduction of that, and make those changes and vote on it again. So, moving forward, I'm going to read A. A is, yeah, we're going to read each one individually, right, Mr. Etrafano? Work down from A through E?
Council President, what I suggest you do is you read, for example, 019-02 first, call for a motion to introduce that ordinance.
Yep.
Second that motion, have any supplemental discussion you want, then call for a vote, and repeat that process for each one. I do not recommend you do them all in bank like we do the consent.
And I wouldn't, actually, yeah, just making sure we're on the same plan. Thank you.
You're welcome.
A is, ordinance would be O-19-02, amending Personnel Chapter 24. 26, I'm sorry, I get it backwards all the time. Specifically, Section 26-6 entitled Personnel Policy and Procedure Manual by repealing subsection 26-62 and amending the language of subsection 26-6.3 to delete references to the employee handbook. Do I have a motion on that?
So moved.
Mr. Quinn. I'm sorry? And we got Manny on the second. Do we have any discussion? No discussion? Clerk, please do the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jedinak?
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Yes.
President Kelly?
Yes. We got 9 yeses, 0 nos, no abstentions. Motion carries. We have, our ordinance is passed, I'm sorry. B is O-19-03, an ordinance fixing the salaries of various officials and contractual employees of the Township of Rockaway and the County of Morris. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Smith? And Mr. Quinn on the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jedinak?
Yeah.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Abstain.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Yes.
President Kelly?
Yes. I got 8 yeses, 1 abstention. Ordinance is passed.
Who's the motion on them?
I'm sorry, it was Mrs. Smith made the motion, and it was seconded by Quinn. We're on C. It would be Ordinance-19-04, an ordinance fixing the salaries of various officials and exempt employees of the Township of Rockaway and the County of Morris. Mr. Freelander?
Yep.
Right? Mr. Freelander made the motion.
I'll second it.
Mrs. Smith, second. Any discussion?
Council President, again, this is the one that is tied to the 2019 budget until the 2019 budget is released. Yeah.
Yeah.
The way that it works is the next person who hits it shuts it off for the last person and it moves. So it just, yeah, the council president's is always lit and the others rotate by whoever last pressed it.
I wish it wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm
going to try that again.
Okay, we have I'm sorry, go ahead.
So again, this ordinance, would you like to hit it again, Mr. Sackett? Mr. Jackson, would you like to hit it again? Okay. Again, this is the ordinance that, as the business administrator told us, is tied to the budget that we haven't yet received or haven't reviewed yet. Thank you.
Do you have any questions, Mr. Judy?
That was the end.
That's it. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jedenak?
No.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Abstain.
Vice President Abrahamson?
No.
President Kelly?
No. I have 5 yeses, 1 abstention, and 3 noes. Ordinance introduced carries. I have D, O-19-05, an ordinance establishing the salaries for police department rank.
I'll make a motion. Oh, you're...
What's that, bud?
He jumped the gun.
Red lighted there, huh? I'm sorry, O-19-05, an ordinance establishing the salaries for police department rank and file personnel in the Township of Rockaway and the County of Morris. Do I have a motion? A little slow, yeah. Mr. Jackson made the motion, seconded by Mrs. Smith. Any discussion? No discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
Abstain.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jedenak?
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Abstain.
President Kelly?
Yes. That would be 7 yeses and 2 abstentions. The ordinance is carried.
Council President, who was the motion on that?
The motion on that was Smith, and it was seconded by Jackson.
Thank you.
Right. Moving on to the consent agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we hit that. I'm sorry, you guys. Jeez. E. O-19-06, an ordinance establishing the salaries for police department superior officers personnel in the Township of Rockaway and the County of Morris. Do I have a motion? Mr. Freelander. By who? Sackett. Sackett. Any discussion? Hearing none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
Abstain.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jedenak?
Yes.
Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Abstain.
President Kelly?
Yes. That would be 7 yeses, 2 abstentions. Ordinance passed for introduction. Moving on to the consent agenda. This is huge. So everybody bear with me on this. And Mrs. Seeger, or you know what, Mr. Yattrapano, I got a question if we can. If we have a resolution that's on here and we wanted to amend that resolution,
Yeah. Which one are you talking about, Councilman?
just in general. I mean,
Okay. The preferred tactic would be a motion to remove a given item from the consent agenda. Second that motion, vote on it. The matter then will be removed from the consent agenda for discussion and further action by the council. In other words, to be acted on individually.
Council President, with regard to consent agendas, the practice has been, and it's in Robert's rules, the purpose of consent agenda is that the items that are on there have, by default, everyone's consent. If there are any items that require further discussion, the council member only has to request that it be removed from the consent agenda to be considered separately. Then the consent agenda is then acted on, and those items that are remaining are acted on one at a time thereafter. That's the practice. That is what Robert's rules says.
But Mr. Yattrapano, the question I had is that if there's any amendment, like we've done in the past, like Mr. Sackett, you wanted a couple that were removed at the last time, and then we voted on them independently.
Correct.
After voting on the consent agenda as a whole. And then we would take a vote on that particular resolution after discussion and something like that. I just wanted, it's different to what you said originally.
Well, I mean, the proper way to remove something from the consent agenda would be my motion. You know, that would be the preferred way of doing it.
Strongly disagree.
So when we haven't done motions like that in the past.
It really doesn't matter that
okay,
much.
That's all.
I'm being hyper-technical.
Okay. So one would have to request a motion to be removed before we would read the whole entire consent agenda?
That would be the better way to do it.
Yeah, you did. I would read the number. I would read
Well,
the numbers
you can read them and just pull one out, table it for subsequent consideration tonight. You know, there's a variety of ways you can do it.
Yeah. But that's, I'd read them all the way down here. And then do it. Okay. The consent agenda we have for resolutions would be, do we want to identify it in the Roman numeral, or we just want to go into the resolution number itself? Okay. It'd be R19-10, R19-20, R19-21, R19-22, R19-23, R19-24, R19-25, R19-26, R19-27, R19-28, R19-30, R19-31, R19-33, R19-34, R19-35, R19-36, and I believe that is it. I'm going to ask if any member wants to extract any item from the consent agenda.
Council President, resolutions 10, 27, and 28, please.
Just pull them off for now.
Discuss.
Then we would vote on the consent agenda entirely, minus those three, and then we would then go back and address those three
individually.
Ask a question, Diana.
10, 27, and 28?
Yes.
Yes. Anybody else have anything that they want to?
I would, Council President, vote on the removal of those matters.
Okay.
By simple motion.
Do I have a motion?
No, you don't need to. But I just
Well,
came
before
through
Mr. Tony said that we didn't need a motion to do it.
Well, you really should, okay? I was trying to be accommodating based upon the fact that wasn't the way
right there in
that
Robert's
you
rules in front
always
of you.
did it.
Look at the
or
next
may
page,
have done it,
top of
but
the next
if we want to be technically appropriate and correct, you should make a motion.
All right. What I have here is
Microphone.
I'm sorry. In order to handle the consent agenda, when presenting it, the chair asks if any member wants to extract an item from the consent agenda. To extract an item, a member needs only rise and request, for example, that 3 be removed from the consent agenda. This means that a member wants to discuss and vote on this issue separately. The request does not need a second and is not discussed, and no vote is taken to remove it from the consent agenda. This is on page 616.
What book are you reading that?
That would be Robert's Rules that we have on there.
You are removing items from the consent agenda, but again...
For discussion.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just going by...
Nevertheless, removing them from the consent agenda and being required subsequently to consider them individually.
That gets to that memo that we got.
That's the difference.
Yeah, but I'm just going by what we've done too before, when we just had our last meeting with Mr. Sackett to remove those items off the resolution. We didn't make a vote on that. We voted afterwards, moving forward.
In the standard procedure.
Yeah, it's standard procedure. So with that being said, make a...
So we're going to move the rest of them.
Correct.
right now, we're going to have a motion to move the consent agenda minus the 3 that have been removed.
Can you just repeat the 3 that are being removed?
I will. It'd
10
be
and what?
R1910,
Okay.
and I believe we have R1927, and we would have R1928, right?
That's it.
And then for the rest of them, we would, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second? I'm sorry? Jackson? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jedinak?
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Yes.
President Kelly?
Yes. That would be 9 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstentions. Motion carries. We have up for discussion on,
Could we do them in reverse order? 28 first?
sure. You have R20, R1928, Council Jeniak?
So R1928 is the resolution approving the signing of the police contract?
Yep.
So this is the opportunity for the administration to tell us about the contract that's before us to be approved?
First, are these contracts online too?
They will be as soon as there's time.
Okay.
And this is the same one that you did already at the last meeting in December, that you've already approved this contract.
Correct.
Today, you're just approving the mayor to sign it.
Yeah,
So
but
you've already approved the contract.
but the public don't have an opportunity to review this prior to any of this currently right now until it's signed. But is the Council 6 signed? I mean, that one you said is on, how is that one online and this one's not?
No,
They're both
previous
old
one.
ones online.
Oh,
not
I'm
the new
sorry.
ones.
I meant the new ones last time we were talking. I didn't. Okay.
New ones, no.
Can you tell us about the R1928, please, Mrs. Seeger?
Police department?
So something as simple as just going through the MOA that we had.
Because I thought you already approved that. So you have to bear with me a minute. They rolled in, the police department gave up, I want to say, 4 vacations? 4 holidays, which were rolled into their base. So they have the same amount of holidays now that everybody has, so everybody has the same amount of holidays. They used to get a uniform payout for like dry cleaning their uniforms, which they really don't do anymore. So we rolled in less than what they got paid to their base pay.
That's only rolled, and then the salary raises.
And the salary raises, I think, were
4, 1.4, 1.4, 1.7, 1.7?
No, I think they were 1.75, 7. I feel kind of bad that I don't have that with me. Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, here it is.
Mrs.
Thank
Seeger,
you,
can you talk
Mr.
to the
Jenya.
microphone? So we
What?
can pick, we can't hear you to pick it up.
Now can
There you
you,
go.
now can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. The agreement is for 4 years. The holidays, they're going to have 12 holidays instead of 16 holidays because 4 were rolled into their base. So that's the same as all the other employees. Annual base rate will increase the value of, a person separated for, they're
Mrs. Palmieri,
getting,
do you want to grab that?
what?
You want Mrs. Palmieri?
No.
Okay.
No, that's just correcting the amount for number 3. That tells the amount that is rolled into their base pay. Uniform replacement shall be deleted effective January 1st, 2018, and as that, they were rolled in $700 into their base pay. Their raise is effective January 1st, 1.7%, 2019, 1.7, 2020, 1.5, 2021 was 1.5. And just to tell you that this was good negotiations, most of the county got 2% or higher on most of their
other agreements settled. Accumulated time payout, they will, instead of getting their accumulated time out paid all at once when they leave, they can ask for the pay over 3 years, as long as the CFO agrees with the time they get paid.
And in us signing this too, since we had, geez, it escapes me again. Arbitration, thank you. We had arbitration that was filed, and because of potentially the comparison of other municipalities, the police department was willing to drop that arbitration in lieu of this agreement of this contract. So moving forward, we could have actually paid more. If we went
We
through
could have
arbitration.
paid more if we went to arbitration, but some of these things they got in here, they wouldn't have got. So that's a negotiation factor. So I can't say, it was a mutual agreement between the police department and us to drop the arbitration.
Right.
Because we reached an agreement that you approved.
There could have also been some other issues because we gave 2% to another group.
Well, they wouldn't have known that because none of the contracts, as the mayor had pointed out, that we try to keep them all confidential until they're all done at once.
Yeah, I thought that was a component that was somewhat brought out in
No,
negotiation.
because they shouldn't have known that. Because it should have been confidential.
Okay, Council President, there's one other component that you had asked about earlier that needed to be included in the resolution.
Oh, yeah, the biggest thing is the settlement of removing, withdrawing the complaint with FERC on fair labor practice.
Correct. That's not written in the agreement, but that is known between both people and the arbitrator,
Do we need a
mediator.
motion to amend this?
No,
Why?
because it's not a contracted item. It's an item that we agree to, and already the arbitrator mediator already knows that's part of our agreement, and he already has a letter from our attorney. As soon as all this is signed, it will be dropped, and it's already been done.
It seems like it's an agreement that has to take place before something else, but it's part of the
It's
contract.
not part of the contract.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Mr. Plum.
Mr. Iacofano, with that verbal agreement with the mediator part, Ms. Sears said the mediator's also involved in that?
The mediator's aware of what we're doing
She
as
said
soon as this gets and the mediator got a letter.
And both parties have a verbal agreement, and the mediator's part of that. Mr. Iacofano, so is that enforceable? I mean, if somebody reneges on that agreement, is it enforceable to make sure that an agreement goes forward?
I would think it would be in this context, Mr. Palumbo. I didn't participate in this. This was done by Labor Council, but that kind of arrangement with settlements of lawsuits, cases, other contract situations is reasonably common, where the finalization of the contract is considered by all parties as a precondition to the dismissal or whatever was done.
Okay. And if one tried to renege, would the other have a right to an unfair labor practice to get in?
Well, I don't know if it'd be unfair labor practice. It'd be some type of procedure to force the settlement that was agreed to. There are a variety of ways it could be approached, but it's pretty common in this area, and I have no concerns about it.
I can tell you that the only person who would renege on that would be the administration, and I'm telling you that's not going to happen.
And it was the understanding of the council when it adopted the MOU at a previous meeting that that would be what the administration would do.
Correct.
That was it, Council President.
Does anyone need extra copies of the contracts? I have.
No, we have them up here too. Okay. Thank you, though. Do we want to vote on this individually, or do you want to vote all?
No, you have to do it.
Yeah. Does anybody have a motion to pass?
I can't. I'll make the motion. I'll make the
All right.
I'll second.
Write it out later. Smith for the motion and seconded by Jackson, right? This is for R19-28. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
Abstain.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jedinak?
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Abstain.
President Kelly?
Yes. We have 7 yeses, 2 abstentions, motion carries. Council President, I'm sorry, Councilman Jeniak, R1927, you had pulled.
Council President, the same as the previous resolution. R1927 is a resolution to approve the signing of the Township of Rockaway and Morris Council 6 agreement, white collar, blue collar supervisors and superintendents.
Mr. Jeniak, since you have that, you want to read it?
He doesn't do the media stuff.
And Mrs. Seeger, I do appreciate how you put it together, just a clip note version. Yeah, I'll try my best to honor that.
It's a 3-year agreement. It's 2% across the board for the 3 years. We're buying uniforms for the dial-a-ride drivers so people can identify them, coming to pick up the people. We thought it would be a safety issue, so we're supplying them with uniforms, and any employee who's given a uniform must now wear it. That's part of the contract. That was of course, the accumulated time payout, that's the same thing. And we changed, we got an extra $1 for the meal money. This is the wrong one. So I'm doing it by memory. That's the other police contract.
Oh.
And
Sorry, I gave you.
and there are plow people who get paid extra to plow during the day at a certain rate. We took that out for anybody going forward. They would not get that increase, but we grandfathered anybody who gets it now.
Moving from this point forward, right?
Correct. And that's it. It was pretty basic.
There was one other change that was made from the last contract for the civilians, wasn't there? With regard to performance appraisals and tying the raises to performance appraisals?
0 increase, 0% would be applied to their evaluation. It's across the board 2%.
And what was it previously?
0.25.
So the previous contract with the civilian staff, 0.25% of their raise was dependent upon. In the previous contract with the civilians, 0.25% of the 2% was dependent upon having satisfactory performance appraisals. That was a provision of the previous contract that previous Mayor Datchison and previous Administrator Poff were very proud of, and when we last voted on this contract, is something that they touted. Having worked in government, both in the state and county, having performance appraisals is important. Having contractual raises tied to satisfactory performance appraisals is also important. So it concerns me that that is no longer going to happen as part of this contract, and I believe that's a big step back. That's it, Council President.
Anybody else?
Yeah, well, I tend to disagree in that regard, where if there is an issue with performance, there's a disciplinary procedure for the employee rather than a stick and carrot approach. So if there's a problem with performance, there's a way to go about it, and that's a disciplinary procedure.
Anyway, Mr. Sackett, do you have anything? No? Anybody else? Mr. Quinn? No? We're good? Do I have a motion to move?
So moved.
No, I saw you first, Manny. I know, he's louder, but he's second on louder. That's okay. I got Manny on the motion, Mr. Freelander, I'm sorry, and I got Mr. Quinn on the second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
Yes.
Councilmember Freelander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jedinak?
No.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yeah.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Abstain.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Yes.
President Kelly?
Yes. I got 7 yeses, 1 abstention, and 1 no. Motion carries. Going into our 19-10. Mrs. Seeger, can you give us a little update on that one?
Sure. It's a resolution that is required by law if you're going to spend more than a certain amount with professional you're appointing your professionals and you're putting a not-to-exceed amount. But the not-to-exceed amount is not to be confused on what they are going to earn for that year. It's just an arbitrary number that is set depending on the amount of work you have this year plus what you paid them last year. So it's a not-to-exceed amount. We cannot pay them any more than that's in the budget. So this is just like the salary ordinance that goes a minimum, maximum. This is required by law. We went over this in December when I did an amendment to this from last year. I gave you all we amended 3 or 4 or 5 of these professionals in December, I think it was.
Yeah, we failed to include them on the original R18.
No, only one of them I failed to include, and that was at the bottom. But the other 4 were increases, or 5, whatever it was. Only one I forgot to include. But I gave you a local finance notice, Local Finance Notice 2017-10 at the last meeting. This applies to the same thing. So it is not an amount you are paying them. It's an amount not to exceed because the law requires that.
But if the money that is in the budget, they can spend up to that amount, whatever's in there.
If we have a reason to, but that doesn't mean we're just going to write a blank check. As Mrs. Abraham said, they have to have a contract for work to what's needed in the township.
But a lot of these numbers that we have here are increased from R1821.
Okay, they are, and I'll give you an example of Princeton Hydro. We only spent $450 last year, but we're asking for $200,000 because we have 2 dams we have to do, and this is an estimated guess on what that work is going to cost.
Yeah, and the concern that I had actually reached out to our CFO. You were unavailable. You had a meeting today. But
I have meetings every day.
Yeah, I know. You were very busy. But the clerk and Mrs. Palmieri and myself, we had met, and she was kind enough to provide me the activity report that we have here.
That's because I had asked for it a couple days ago. So she just gave you a copy of what I had. It's because I knew you'd have a question tonight.
Okay. I asked for that. So I didn't know what you were doing. I actually asked for 1099s originally.
Well, 1099s wouldn't have gave you what you wanted.
Not some of the information that was on there, so we agreed on the, and I get this almost every year.
Correct.
Myself. But today is the, waiting for me to ask it rather than provide it with the backup data for what you changed some of these not to exceed amounts. And some of them are extremely extreme that we have here.
And it's so I don't
and you kind of give a guesstimation to hit these thresholds that are on there.
And that's what it says in there. Yeah.
It says $250,000 for an engineer?
No, it says it's based on prior year services rendered, change in hourly rates, or projected increase or decrease in the projects that you're going to do.
Okay.
So we try to estimate the best we can. I don't have a crystal ball to say, well, these are all the projects we want to do because we're putting them in the budget.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Can you just hold on? We have a little bit of an error here with a
Okay, no problem.
technical issue.
I guess,
What time is it? Can you put that in time?
11.
I'm trying, Mr. Quinn, I really am. Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you vote
Do you have this?
I have
Straight ahead. Straight ahead.
I have the pilot, it's gone.
Straight ahead. Isn't it?
Yeah, but this is good, though. Who created this?
Jeremy.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
He does.
I gave him one, but I don't know what he did
No,
with
I
his
had a
paperwork.
pilot, but somehow it's...
Okay. Well, now you have it again. But the question is, what is the threshold?
No, I see the numbers.
Yeah.
I was just doing the basic math just from the numbers.
We should give this to
Sorry.
everybody who listens.
I had a good pilot. That's okay. I'll let it slide. You did see it. It's good. Well, I hear it. I was watching Columbo's house.
Yeah, they're trying to lighting up.
Yeah. Mr. Yatrafano, should we just call a small recess again, like another 5-minute recess for a handle of technical data here?
Whatever.
You're okay. I know, but the more you think about it, the worse you feel. Want one of my special mints?